I changed the dimensions of the wall on the computer monitor in front of me. I looked up at the TV screen as I heard the news anchor mention a murder in neighboring Ocala. The first thing I saw was a long shot of Sally, my wife, and David, my best friend, emerging from a motel door in the background. She had left work early to go shopping, while he was meant to be in Gainesville checking on a job site. I was stunned. What the heck was this? All sorts of possibilities crossed my mind. I knew I couldn't accuse them of anything without concrete evidence. This completely surprised me. My wife and I had been married for 14 years, while Dave and his wife had been close friends for 10. Dave, Sally, and I were in business together. We had founded an architectural service together. We worked closely together. And David Forrester and his wife Mary were our closest pals after us. We socialized several times every month. I have an architecture degree and create the designs. Sally oversees the firm's business operations, whereas Dave works primarily in the field, ensuring that everything is done properly, according to my strategy. We performed okay until around 4 years ago. I would like to receive a major award for designing a city hall for a nearby city. Suddenly, we had queries from all over. We'd quadrupled our team, and I now had 12 other architects working for me. We had just moved into a new structure that we had built for ourselves. The building was 7 stories tall, and our offices took up the entire top floor. The majority of the building was rented out, and the rents covered the mortgage with a tidy profit left over. We had each put up money at the start. Sally had invested 25%, whereas I had invested 50%. And Dave made up the difference. At the time, I was working on perhaps 20 significant designs and putting in long hours. I was far ahead of schedule and planned to ease down soon. That afternoon's surprise had me perplexed. I wasn't sure what to think. I knew Sally and I's enthusiasm had diminished over the last few years due to the lengthy hours I was putting in. I would have risked everything I possessed on Sally's love and loyalty to me. Our love life was intermittent, but I considered it enough. I considered what I had observed. My old college mate, George Shelton, was the TV station's associate manager. I had my secretary call him for me. He owed me some big-time favors from years ago. I requested him to grab me a DVD of the new show from that afternoon. He stated it was a little issue and he would have it delivered to my workplace within an hour. I called Sally at 4 o'clock, as was my habit, regardless of where we were. If we were separated, she seemed pleased to hear from me and informed me that she had purchased a lovely flank steak, contacted Mary, and asked her and Dave to supper, so I'd need to get home in time to start the grill. She stated that she was planning dinner for 6:30 or 7. My intercom rang just a few minutes later, and the receptionist informed me that she had a tiny parcel addressed to Mr. John Nelson. The DVD was promptly delivered to my office. I put it on, and after 3 viewings, I was confident I had seen what I expected. I noticed something I had not seen before. Was this before my attention was called to the program? There was footage of Dave and Sally kissing inside the door to room 116. They were visible behind the reporter as he described the location of the murder some hours earlier. Another shot revealed the name of the motel, which I recognized nevertheless. I had designed the remodel several years before. I knew Tom Noble, the owner of the Nobility Motel, so I called him and told him about all the hoopla. I asked whether he had surveillance video of the area between rooms 115 and 118. He stated that the police had collected copies of the video footage from that area of the motel and were highly pleased with the quality of the images. I asked if he knew Dave, and he claimed they spoke on the phone but had never met in person. I told him I was interested in looking at those photos. He said we could view them whenever I wanted. He would leave instructions for the desk clerks to give me access to everything I wanted to view. I asked if I could see them in about 15 minutes, and he answered, "Hey, John, no problem. This afternoon's DVDs are currently in the player." I shut down my large computer, which I used for my CD programs. I told my secretary that I was leaving early and asked her to contact security when the last person left our offices. I viewed the camera video and noticed both of their automobiles parked in front of 116. Dave arrived first, retrieved the key from the office, and entered the room. Sally came a few minutes later and went straight in. There was other traffic moving up and down the walkway. Then a man with a gun appeared, sprinting by 116 and around the corner of the building. Then police and plainclothes cops rushed by with drawn firearms. Then it was quiet for a time. Then I noticed the TV team had set up, and the reporter was visible, chatting, as Sally and Dave kissed in the door and went. I asked the cashier to make me a copy. I took the film to the location where Sally and Dave arrived and asked the clerk if he recognized them. Why, yeah, I do. Each week they spend at least one day or night here. They arrive about lunchtime and go in the morning. That's Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. They've been doing this for as long as I've been here, and that'll be 2 years next month. Nice people. I thanked him, took the DVD, and went home. I needed to decide how to play this. I saw no reason to alert the 2 cheetahs that I was on their trail. I would have to remain calm till I figured everything out. I was making a plan. It was still tough, and I needed time. I was thinking about my darling wife. She was a year younger than me, turning 35 and looking 2 years younger. She currently works out 1 or 2 afternoons per week. I had a good notion what workouts she was performing. How could I possibly be so stupid? Were they cheating me in other ways? Like stealing money from a business? I required a confidential audit of the books. Sally handled that aspect of the business, and I had always trusted her completely. I'd have to get her and Dave out of town and schedule a forensic audit while they were gone. Then it struck me. Sally and I were going to attend the Southeastern Architects Association meeting for 3 days. We planned to take Dave and Mary with us by the end of next week. We even spoke about doing it a few weeks ago. I needed to find someone I trusted. Marge, my normal secretary, was going on maternity leave for a month starting Monday. I usually segregated myself from the majority of the other employees and stayed in my own workspace with my assistant. Then I thought of the new girl who had been working for many days and was about to be checked out by March. March was preparing her to take over for her while she went on maternity leave. I'd seen that her work was exceptional. She was a really young and beautiful little child. Marge informed me she was exceptionally clever, a single mother with a 2.5-year-old daughter, and was taking college courses many nights per week. Her name was Debbie Summers. The few letters and notes I dictated to her were excellent when she handed them to me. The first time I met her, she requested if she might talk to me for a few minutes. She wanted to know whether there was any potential of the company opening a daycare space in the building for people like her. She believed that having their children nearby would make many of the workers feel more at ease. Debbie made her case calmly and clearly, explaining the benefits to the companies in the building. She had the names of all the employees from the companies that desired such a facility. She had calculated the cost of staffing attendance and even included the rent for the sole available venue. This tiny girl has it together. I was impressed. I advised her to work on her proposal more and had discussed it with Sally and Dave. They both agreed it was a fantastic idea. Sally planned to meet with all of the tenants and discuss how to split the project's costs. I hadn't heard back from Sally yet. I needed to talk with Debbie. I'd have plenty of opportunities over the next month, as she'd be in and out of my private office every day. I thought about Sally and what had happened between us. I couldn't believe this woman was only faking since she was such a passionate lover. She was usually happy. She would come into my office multiple times a day, kiss me tenderly, and tell me she loved me. No one was so brilliant at acting, were they? And Dave? He discussed how much he cherished his memory. I couldn't believe he'd lie. Nobody was so good, sincere, and demonstrative in their love and still cheated. I knew I had to be that fantastic tonight, or one of them would notice. Could I fool them all? I needed a cover tail to hide behind. Perhaps a headache will help. What about a cold or something? No. A headache is ideal. Don't bring it up unless someone makes a remark. Then take some aspirin. Dinner that evening went nicely. It was no different from many other experiences we had shared together. I excelled as a gracious host and loving husband. I was fuming inside. There were 2 close calls in which I felt things may erupt. First, Mary inquired whether anyone had heard about the murder at the Nobility Motel in town. I saw Sally flinch. Dave was cool as a cucumber and asked whether it was the same location. We had previously completed some work for this client. I said it was. I observed Mary. She remained quiet and calm. I had a feeling she knew they were lovers and was sticking in a needle. Later, after supper, we all helped clean up. Sally was washing something and Dave was drying. Mary was carrying dishes inside from the patio where we had eaten, and I was close after her with several pots and pans. As we arrived, Sally and Dave were talking softly. Mary said, "Hey, where are you two planning to meet?" after John and I have fallen asleep in our beds. They jumped in. Sally laughed. Of course. It's the only way we can receive love. And you become stuck in the mud. Will not offer us any. I keep begging old Dave, but he's terrified Mary'll catch us and throw him out on his ear. Everyone had a nice laugh. Mary snorted. Don't worry about that. At least I'd know he wasn't bringing home some exotic disease. Sally giggled. Right. I would never catch anything from John. She gave me a hug and kiss. Darn, she was good. I smiled and laughed alongside everyone else. After Mary and Dave had left, I stared at Sally. What's happening? Is there anything I should know? She gazed at me with her stunning brown eyes. What do you mean? I honestly don't know. It was just a sense I had. Everyone seems to know something that I don't. Is it only me? I do not know. All I know is that I only adore you. You are my life, my reason to live. I'm ready to try for a baby. I barely have a few years left until it's too late. Yours is the only baby I'll ever have. My dear love, only yours. Now go lock up, and I will fetch the lights and meet you upstairs. Okay. I stood there trying to figure out what to do. I thought about it for a long. I was confident I was correct. Yet I feel she was telling the truth when she said she loved me. I shrugged and proceeded up the steps. I stepped gently into our bedroom and noticed her on the bed. Her eyes were closed. I shrugged, stripped, and walked into the bathroom to shower and brush my teeth. Her eyes were open when I returned. She smiled and stretched her arms, saying, Come to me, my sweetheart. I need your affection so that I can sleep. I need you to make me feel satisfied and loved. Her physique was fantastic. She was irresistible. I needed her as much as she claimed she needed me. I stood and proceeded to the restroom. I was sick to my stomach. I battled not to vomit my dinner. I swiftly knelt beside the toilet bowl. Dinner arrived. Sally stood alongside me, holding my head. I backed away and bathed my face with cold water. I could not look at her. I went into my dressing room and put on some jeans, a t-shirt, and some sneakers. I retrieved my keys and billfold from my slacks. Sally kept asking me what was wrong. As I stared at her, I started crying and hurried out of the house. I drove away without knowing where I was headed. I simply drove. It was only about 10 a.m. when I spotted a familiar tiny cafe and stopped in to get a coffee and plan my next move. My cell phone was buzzing. I glanced at it, Sally. I turned it off and entered the cafe. It was practically vacant. I sat at a booth. A waiter approached and I requested coffee. I sat sipping my hot coffee, wondering how I had let my marriage slip away from me. Why hadn't I seen some signs? My head was in my hand, my eyes closed, as I attempted to make sense of what had happened in my life. I heard a gentle voice remark, Hey, sailor, things can't be that bad. I looked up. There was Debbie from my office. I shook my head. No, there is much worse. My life has literally been thrown away. She seems really concerned. She took my hand in her small one and said, Boss, I am an excellent listener. I'm on my way home after night school and I have some free time. Would you like to tell me all about it? I gazed at her. I exhaled. Girl, my troubles are far too serious for your naive years. I don't think there's anything you can tell me that I haven't already heard. My father was a street cop and told us everything that happened at work. He worked in the worst parts of town. My sister is a love addict with an alcohol problem. Her husband is a drug user. I've heard or seen it all. I stared at her. Please forgive me. I guess my difficulties are only that severe for me. I honestly don't know what to do. Boss, Mr. John, please tell me about it. Maybe simply getting it off your chest can clear things up for you. Okay, girl. You asked for it. I just found out that my wife has been cheating on me with my partner and best friend. They are unaware that I know. My wife invited her lover and his wife around for supper tonight. It was difficult to remain cool, but I have no hard evidence yet. I assumed they had love this afternoon after dinner. She wanted to be in love with me. I lost it, ran and vomited. Then I fled out of the house. So there you have it, a tragic story. What gets me is how frequently she says she loves me. I believe her. However, I know it cannot be true. She's still holding my hand in her small hands. She stated you were talking about Miss Sally and Mr. Dave, correct? Yes, your wife is one of the most stunning and elegant women I've ever seen. She always looks flawless. I do not like Mr. Dave. He always appears to be undressing me with his eyes. He's never said anything, though. I believe your wife may have a similar condition as my sister's. She adored her husband, but she cheated on him nearly every day. She couldn't control herself. She would accompany every man who asked her. If a man did not ask her, she would ask him what had happened to her. Her husband divorced her, and her condition worsened. She is currently dying of AIDS. Her children are with their father, God. I still love her. The two types of individuals I despise the most are cheaters and liars. How will I ever trust her again? How can I live with her again? What can I do? Mr. John, I believe that people may change. Perhaps with counseling for both of you, this can be resolved. I gazed at this lovely young woman. Honey, do you truly believe that? Mr. John, there are too many unknowns in this situation for me to make an estimate. Does she also adore him? How did it begin? Does she want it to end? Who does she adore the most? How long have they been at this? Why isn't she quitting? There's a lot to try and find out. I believe that the sooner you obtain this information, the easier it will be for you. Is there a pattern to when they come together? How do they communicate? I would recommend that you seek a full report of all her cell phone calls over the last few months. This young girl was astonished. Clever. I choose to trust her. She already knew everything. I told her I'd pay her to help me get some of the information I needed. She laughed. I'll help you. I do not want your money. I do not aid pals for money. Okay, friend, then call me John. Except at work, we need to appear normal. I believe I'd like you to find an investigator and a forensic accountant for me. We are all scheduled to attend a meeting in Atlanta on Friday and return on Monday. Money is irrelevant. I'll give you a company credit card to pay for everything. I believe they meet on Tuesdays or Fridays when she is meant to be at the gym. I will give you the name of the gym. I know where they meet. I even know which room they use. The proprietor of the motel is one of my customers. I believe covert cameras are in order. So, Miss Summers, is that enough to get you started? She smiled. The name is Debbie John. I may need to ask you to pay for a babysitter so that I can get part of this done. Place it on the card. You can withdraw up to $300 in cash from any ATM or for a fee anywhere. It has a total of $10,000. I will give you the PIN when I provide you the card. I placed my other hand over hers. I guarantee you that I will never forget what you were doing for me. You make a great friend. I take good care of my buddies. I always have. I'm ashamed to say that. I don't know many of the company's employees or who their allegiances are. I'm not sure why, but I absolutely trust you, Mr. John. I appreciate it. This felt like a heaviness was lifted off my chest. I leaned back in the booth, gazing at this woman or child. What a fascinating individual she was. I grinned at her. I've been thinking about it, and I guess the problem with my wife must be my fault. I haven't been paying enough attention to my wife. I can't see that. The standard complaint about the husband being too preoccupied with business may apply because she devotes about as much time to it as I do. I need additional information to determine whether this is something that can be fixed. I smiled. Debbie, you were correct. You are an excellent listener and wise beyond your years. Tell me something about yourself. Mr. John, as I previously stated, my father was a cop. He was shot by a man. He came to inform me that his car's gas cap had come off and was dangling by a plastic cable that only lasted a few hours. Mom and I were holding his hands when he died. We moved in with my Uncle William Denton. He owns a large house and has never married. That was when I was 15. We were happy there. Uncle William was really strict with Nancy, my sister and I. She was 2 years older and did anything she pleased, regardless of what he said. He eventually offered her a choice, obey him or get out. She departed the following day. He filed a missing child report on her, and the officers returned her home a few days later. She was gone for 2 days. It was more than a year before we saw her again. She knocked on the door one night with her husband and baby. Uncle William took them in and they stayed for several years. Uncle Bill's guest cottage is out back. Meanwhile, I had graduated from high school. I was valedictorian and first in my class. That summer, I got a job in a department store and was eventually promoted to assistant manager of the ladies' shoe department. 2 months later, the manager left because her husband was moved, and I was appointed as acting manager until a replacement could be found. They never replaced me and promoted me to manager when I reached 18. I did an excellent job for them and everyone was happy of me. Then, at a corporate Christmas party, I was drugged and attacked. I had no idea who had done it, let alone how many. However, when I found out I was pregnant, I was dismissed. To make a long tale short, my uncle wanted me to terminate the baby, but I refused. So I left home. I had my baby girl, and I adore her very much. I can't believe this. I had saved the majority of what I earned at the department shop and had a decent sum in savings. I moved in with a more older woman who had a young infant and looked after her while she worked. I remained with her until her husband returned from the army. Dolly had been born by then, and I discovered the small efficiency apartment where we currently live. When I go to work, I leave her in a daycare a block away. I'm happy that a wonderful lady in the flat next door will watch Dolly while I attend to lessons, like tonight. That's about it. I gazed at her and patted her small, warm hand, which remained in mine. Debbie, if you ever need anything, please let me know. What are you studying at college? I am currently pursuing business administration. I have not decided what I want to do. Tuition is expensive for me and my savings are running low. I'll make it, however, now that I have a solid job. I smiled and said in my best old guy voice, Sweetie, I have a proposition for you. Debbie, don't be ridiculous. Her brow furrowed and she looked at me. I'm just kidding. The proposition is this. I'll pay your remaining education expenditures. You will sign a contract to work for me till graduation. Your grades will also impact your pay for the 5 years following graduation. What grading system are they using? 0 to 4.0. Okay, what's your current GPA? I'm running at 3.5 right now, but I don't have much time to study. Right. Would being able to afford childcare help? Childcare while I work is what keeps me broke. I only have time to study when she takes a nap, after she goes to bed on weekends, or when I don't have a class, and housekeeping interferes with that. Listen, daughter, I am almost certain we will go with your childcare suggestion. I'm going to give you a tiny rise when you finish your first 90 days with the organization, which begins right now. You'll receive a 20% raise for every 10th of a point. Your GPA goes higher. A GPA of 4.0 will quadruple your salary. Wow, discuss your incentive ideas. I love it. I will not disappoint you, Mr. John, I promise. Hey, if you call me Mr. again while we are not at work, the contract is over, got it? Yes, John, I do understand, fine. I'd better let you get home now. Dear, I need to hurry. Good night. She smiled. She then looked at me sober. A tear rolled down her cheek. She leaned over and kissed my cheek before running out the door. I finished my coffee, and as I stood up, I saw her check and examined it. She had purchased a cappuccino and a grilled cheese sandwich for $2.50. I paid both checks. The next morning, I heard heels clicking down the hall to my private office and looked up to see Debbie standing at the open door. Good morning, boss. Her grin brightened my day. She was beautifully attractive and cheerful. Good morning to you, Debbie. Come in. She approached to my desk, gently placed 3 $1 notes on it, and smiled at me. I left early this morning and stopped at the cafe on my way to work to pay the bill. I neglected to pay last night. They said no one paid checks last night. You must have paid my... I laughed. Yeah, I also got your check. This is too much. It cost only $2.50. Did you also pay a tip? I nodded. Yes, I suppose I did. I handed her the envelope and added, Here's the credit card. The PIN is written inside the envelope's cover. I want you to get started on the unique tasks we talked about yesterday. I'll tell Marge you're working on the childcare project so you can take as much time as you need. Is this good with you? She smiled again as she accepted the envelope. Yes, sir. Mr. John, if I finish before the end of the workday, I will report on my progress. I had to grin at her. If you spend the entire day, you can gather some comparison information about the daycare. Do you go to the cafe every evening around the same time? That is usually what I have for dinner. It's usually all I have time for, if I do not see you this afternoon. I will attempt to meet you tonight. Then she returned to the office by noon and handed me an envelope. She smiled. Here are estimates for everything you asked. Please let me know whether they are satisfied with the audit. I'll need an answer by tomorrow evening to get everything set up for this weekend. I think I'll have to stay with them. Can Dolly join me on the surveillance project? I have it all set up. I need to call them using the information in the package. Should I stop again in an hour? I promised her that I'd have the answers for her then. I couldn't resist smiling back at her. I buzzed Sally's intercom. She responded right away. Hello, honey, what's happening? Not much. I suppose you didn't go out for lunch today? No, my sweetheart. I'm too busy today and my workout is set for tomorrow at 12 o'clock. I need to get the payroll done early because we're leaving early Friday for Atlanta. Giggle. Have you coordinated anything with Dave and Mary? Yes. Do you feel better this morning? You acted strangely last night. I do not comprehend what is going on with you. Do not worry about it. I feel a lot better today. That girl, what is her name? You know, the one with the daycare option. That is Debbie, honey. Yes, Debbie. She dropped off some figures obtained from other daycare providers. She's a clever little cookie. Yes, she is. She's as cute as a chubby, tiny insect. Do I need to keep an eye on her while she's with you? Why? You've never been concerned about such issues before. Besides, I'm way too old for her. She resembles a teeny bopper. However, if I were 20 years younger, you might be worried. She is also quite brilliant. Well, she is old enough to have a child. I guess she hasn't lost weight since her pregnancy. She gave me a photo of her daughter. Now there's a true cutie who made me extremely jealous. I want one too. We will see. I need to get to work on the Baker project. I also want it ready to go out on Friday. I may need to work late tonight to catch up. I will let you know later. Debbie gathered the information and left work early to provide it to the investigators. Later that afternoon, Dave came by my office. I asked if he was ready to go to Atlanta for the weekend. He claimed he was. He said, "Sally mentioned you were unwell yesterday night. You doing okay today?" "Yeah, Dave or Buddy." I must have eaten someone. I grinned at him. Yes, as if you could ever cheat on Sally. She'd kill you if she caught you. Maybe. I smiled and laughed. What about if I caught her? I think he flinched. He grinned. Fat chance. The girl adores you. She'd never cheat on you. I examined him attentively. You might be right about it. I've heard that, depending on the circumstances, any woman can or cannot cheat. She has a large group of admirers. I agree with you that the boys are yearning after her. However, she belongs to you. Yeah. The conference ran smoothly and we had a good time. I called Debbie every day and she said Sunday morning that she had all of the information I needed. She promised to get it on my desk by Monday morning. I felt as nervous as a kitten in a room full of rocking chairs. I felt uneasy the entire time we were there. Fortunately, we had endless activities day and night. We were fatigued when we went to bed that night. Sally did not appear disappointed when we headed straight to Sheep. One night there was a show that ran till midnight. The next night we made it land underneath. We limped into our suite around 2 a.m. We had a breakfast buffet meeting and were done. We got on Interstate 75 and went south. We each traveled for an hour and a half and arrived home about 6 that evening. While Mary and I were in the back seat, Sally and David assumed we were both asleep. I saw that while Sally drove, she kept moving his hands away from her. Then she looked back at us. I was watching from beneath the brim of my baseball cap. I do not suppose she could see my eyes. I noticed her indicate to Dave, and as he turned back to check on us, I closed my eyes briefly. When I opened, he sat closer to Sally. She sighed gently a few times, so I assumed he was pleasing her. I moaned and sat up. "Where are we currently?" I asked. They both jumped, Sally said. "Get back to sleep. We've just arrived in Florida and are looking for a place to stop and rest while Dave takes over." I realized my marriage had ended. Sally and I didn't say much on the journey from Dave and Mary's to our house. We did pass through the drive-thru at the neighborhood hamburger emporium. When we got home, we unloaded 8-hour burgers and climbed into bed. She snuggled close to me and began lightly snoozing within a few minutes. I fought to fall asleep for about an hour. No luck. I got up and dialed Debbie's cell phone. She responded, sounding wide awake. I inquired as to how everything had run so smoothly. She responded, "Things are pretty dull around here with you gone. However, I believe things will spiral out of control tomorrow." "Is it that horrible, hun?" "I believe so. Could you please place everything in the center drawer of my desk?" "It'll be there. Thanks. Good night." "Good night. I am delighted you're back. I agree." Monday mornings were normal. I departed for work well before Sally woke up. David would come 10 minutes after I did. I thought about it. He couldn't stop by to do Sally and go so soon. Sally is not the type of person who falls in love quickly. I read the report by Atkinson and Jenkins accountants. Everything was okay except for one person who was misusing his expense accounts. It was Dave. It was only a few $100s each month. I didn't care if no one saw it. However, it set a negative precedent for the workforce. Everything brightened when I heard the heels click down the corridor. Debbie poked her head around the corner of my door. She arrived early. She smiled, and things improved dramatically. "Hello, boss. How are you doing today?" "I do not know yet. I haven't read the investigator's report yet. Have you read it?" She averted her gaze from mine before returning it and nodding. "Is it that horrible, Deb?" She nodded again. Naturally, a tear streamed down her cheek. I sat down and took out the brown envelope from the center drawer. I removed the report and read it fast. What I had suspected came true. There was abundant proof. I picked up the DVD and inserted it. A title stated the day, date, and time. The scene was from Tuesday. The investigators were quite quick. The first thing I saw was Sally entering the motel room and kissing Dave. They kissed for quite a while. They parted and began undressing. Sally was amazing, as usual. I saw him screw her. I watched till I feared I would become ill. I fast-forwarded to the following scene. The following scene was from Thursday at 12:16. Same room. Dave waited for her. Sally entered and announced, "Dave, this is the end." I suppose we became too careless. I believe they both suspect something. We cannot do it again. The video's quality was definitely adequate, but it was unlikely to win any honors. Dave drew back. "I suppose you were correct. It's been a lovely 5 years. Do you believe we can have one last love? Oh no, I am heading to the gym. Take care of yourself this weekend. Don't screw things up right now. I can't lose my John. That would kill me. Yeah, I feel the same way about Mary. I absolutely love her." They kissed again and left the room. Dave exited after dropping the room key on the table by the door. I stared at Debbie, tears flowing down my face. She quickly shut the door and approached me. She asked, "John, are you all right?" "They are both scheduled to meet you here in 20 minutes. Do you want me to postpone it for a while?" "No. Give me a minute to wash my face and I will be fine." "When do you expect Mrs. Forrester to arrive?" 5 to 10 minutes after Ms. Sally and Mr. Force will arrive." "Can you stall for that long?" "Let me know when she arrives. Then bring her in here. You also remain here. It wouldn't hurt to have a witness. You have control over the concealed cameras in here, right?" "Yes. The control is located on my desk." "Good. Turn it on. When the first visitor enters this room, the sooner you can get Mrs. Forrester inside, the better." "Okay." "Yes, Mr. Nelson. You will do perfectly fine. I guess you noticed the tissue boxes I placed around the room." She looked up at the clock. "Yes. I need to get away of my desk." She opened the door. She peered outdoors. Then she turned to look at me. She blew me a kiss. "Stay strong, boss." The door closed behind her. 2 minutes later, the buzzer went off, and I saw the door open. And Dave held the door for Sally. I claimed to be speaking with someone on the phone. I motioned them to sit down. I replied, "That's exactly what I was thinking, George. I'll call you back if anything changes. I just want to get this over with as soon as possible." "Right. I will let you know how things go." The beep went off again. I heard Debbie mention that Mrs. Forrester has arrived. "Show her in." The door opened and Mary and Debbie sat down. I smiled at Mary. "Mary, my first instinct was that you should be here as well, because what is happening here today also impacts you." Sally and Dave gazed at each other. They weren't smiling. I gazed around the room. "I believe you all have met Miss Summers. She is my temporary secretary while Marge is expecting her child. She is here to take notes so we can get started. I'd like you all to watch the TV monitor over there." I pressed the button on my desk and the TV displayed the scene when Sally joined Dave at the motel. They looked silently at the television. Sally then stood and screamed, "No, no," and she collapsed on the floor. Dave stared at me. "You son of a jerk," Mary stated. "You're the son of a jerk. Shut up, David. I want to hear this." After a few minutes of love, I ended the show. I think we've seen enough of that stuff. I want Mary to watch another segment. I skipped ahead to the point where they realized they needed to stop cheating on Mary and me. 5 years later, Sally was still sobbing on the floor. "Sally, I told you to stop it. It's too late for that. You should listen to what I have to say. It's about your future." She looked up at me. I wanted to run and soothe her. I heard a voice in my head saying, "Be strong, boss." I looked around the room and then turned off the DVD. After the two lovers expressed their love for their spouses, I remarked, "Sally, look at me." Her head slowly rose. "Sally, I'll adore you forever. However, I will never live with or trust you again. You will be served with divorce papers as you leave this office." I looked at Mary. Mary, honey, I apologize for bringing this up so suddenly, but I believe you were aware of what was going on. Yes, I was positive it was. I could smell Sally's perfume on Dave all the time. Some of his stories did not add up. I forgive you, John. I, too, have a lawyer lined up for this situation. I looked at Sally and then at Dave. So that's out of the way for our business together. In my opinion, cheating on your spouse is equivalent to stealing according to our wedding vows. We promise to renounce all others and give our bodies to the person we will marry. Giving your body or any portion of it to someone else is theft from your spouse. You are the thief. You can't be trusted. Business partnerships are very similar to marriages. They are built on trust. I don't trust any of you anymore. I propose that I buy both of you out. I'm not sure I have the money to do that right now, so I offer that I operate the business until the funding is ready. The other alternative is to sell the company and split the earnings based on your shares. I propose a 10-day waiting period to allow every one of us to consider his or her alternatives. I glanced at them all. Does anyone want to say anything? Mary said yes. The money David put into this company belongs to me. I would prefer to be your silent partner. David has been dismissed as of now. He too has lost his home. She sat down after glaring at Dave. I smiled at Mary. Honey, it makes things easy for me. I'll have paperwork prepared to that effect. I noticed Sally raise her hand. I nodded at her. She stared at me with anguish. John, please allow me to keep my portion as well. I'll also be a silent partner. Just send me my dividends when you pay Mary's. Mary, please forgive me. I never intended for this to happen. It's all because I'm a weak woman. I discarded the best man in the world. I have nothing more to live for. Nothing. My life is over. I was stupid. So damned foolish. I told Sally, you can have the house. I could not live there. I'll get my belongings out as soon as I locate somewhere to live. I will call and leave a message. Sally went out the door. I heard Mrs. Sally Nelson's name. Yes, ma'am, you were served. I heard her heels slowly clip down the hall. I strolled to the window and peered at nothing. My eyes were flooded with tears. I thought the hurt I felt was the worst of the week. After a few minutes, I felt a force trying to turn me away from the window. I turned to see Debbie pulling on my arm. She seems really concerned. Mr. John, are you okay? She tenderly dabbed my eyes with a tissue. I smiled and thanked her. I remarked, it is difficult to close the door on 14 years of what I thought was a perfect marriage. I need to start a new life. At the very least, I intend to continue operating the firm. I was frightened of losing it. She smiled. That makes me extremely delighted for both of us. I can now hold you to your commitment. No, I would have fulfilled my pledge to you somehow. I'm okay now. How are you doing on the childcare project? Debbie smiled, and the cloud above my head vanished. I have finalized all of the figures. I even have a retired RN who would be happy to run it for us. She claims she knows other aunts who would like to work here either part-time or full-time. I'd like to bring her in. I suppose you'd have to interview her. I gazed at her. No, Debbie. It is your responsibility to do so if you believe it is essential. If she is the person you are looking for, refer her to Joan, the human resources manager. Lady, do you still have any money on that credit card? Yes, more than half of it. Okay, for now. Use it to purchase equipment and supplies. She needs to get started. If she requires changes to the room, notify maintenance. Schedule a meeting with each of the department heads. Include both Miss Sally's and Mr. Dave's assistants. Schedule it for just after noon in the conference room. I smiled at her. Honey, I am going to unload a load on your shoulders. Can you handle it? Yes, I can do it. I may need your assistance from time to time, but I will not bother you unless absolutely necessary. Listen, plan your days to incorporate a regular meeting with me. First thing every morning. Wait, you're now my personal assistant. Have a competent secretary assigned to you. Give yourself a raise, appropriate for your new work. Now get going, girl. You are suddenly quite busy. She smiled cheerfully at me. She flung her arms around my neck, kissing my lips. She jerked back, her little delicate hands flying to her face. Please, I'm so sorry. I just became aroused. I laughed at her. Thank you for the nice, small kiss. I may have to promote you on a daily basis. She reddened. She seemed quite serious. I hope I earned the promotion because of more than just my kisses. Don't worry about it. Kisses are not currently and will never be part of your job description. I gave you the position because I believe you will do an excellent job for me. I need your aid to manage this business. You'll be my eyes and ears. The promotion of Debbie was the best thing I did for the company. She was a miniature tornado. I was rarely troubled by little issues. She saw that what I performed was the heart of the organization. She understood that everyone in the company's sole purpose was to aid and support what I was doing. The childcare was up and running quickly. A week or two later, Debbie entered my office for our daily meeting. She smiled and wore a new gray business suit. She appeared quite professional and businesslike. It fitted well. "Good morning, boss. How are you doing this morning, Deb?" "My day is considerably better now that my right hand has arrived." She grinned. "Thank you, sir. You have just made my day. Now I'd want you to meet my new assistant." She leaned over and pressed the button on my intercom. "Send her now, please." The door opened, and a tiny little girl stepped inside. "Here I am, Mommy." Debbie grabbed her hand and led her over to me. She said, "Dolly, I want you to meet my boss. Mr. John, good morning." "Just like I taught you, honey." The tiny girl was angelic as she curtsied and softly murmured, "Good morning, Mr. John. I'm glad to meet you." I know I had a large grin on my face as I mentioned, "Good morning, Miss Dolly. I am glad to meet you. Are you happy with your new daycare here?" "Yes, it's fun. We ride the bus. I have other children to play with. I enjoy it because Mommy can come and see me frequently. I've just fallen in love. She was adorable, cute, and very smart." I asked her, "Dolly, have you ever gone to the zoo?" She stared at Debbie and then at me. "No. Are you asking where all the animals are?" "Good." I looked at Dolly. "I'd love to take you and your mommy to the zoo on Sunday if you want to travel." She looked up to Deb. "Mommy, may we go? Could we?" I looked at Debbie. "I'm sorry, it was inappropriate of me to put you on the spot like way. I should have asked you first. Please forgive me. This won't happen again." She smiled softly. "You've just become enthusiastic. I understand how you feel. You want to make her happy and show her new things." Yes. "We'd love to go. I will prepare a picnic meal for us. Debbie, do you own a car?" "No. Mine broke down, and I don't believe it's worth fixing. I'm saving up to buy a property. As my personal assistant, I believe you should have a company car to execute your job. I'll look into it this afternoon, after I take you and Miss Dolly to lunch." We had an excellent day visiting the zoo. Dolly was quite enthusiastic and wanted to see everything. I ended up carrying her the majority of the time. I had no idea how amazing spending time with a youngster could be. I also enjoyed being with her mother. The next day, I called our transportation chief and discovered that we had a 2-year-old Honda Odyssey that was not in use. I urged him to get it washed and detailed inside and out. It had company logos on it. I instructed him to park in the dedicated parking area for my personal assistant and bring me the keys. He replied he didn't believe we had a parking space reserved for it. I said, "Change the sign in Mr. Dave's old location." "Yes, sir." Debbie stopped by my workplace that afternoon. Dolly was with her. She said they were going home. I pushed out my bottom lip and feigned to cry. Dolly's eyes grew huge. "Mr. John is crying, Mama." They both questioned what was wrong. I stated that Dolly did not kiss me goodbye. Dolly ran to me, holding out her arms to be taken up. I swept her up and giggled. I now feel better. I gave her a nice kiss before setting her down. I gave Debbie the car keys. She appeared puzzled. "Missy, you look really professional in your new suit. We cannot harm our image by having you take the bus. You have the keys to your corporate automobile. It is parked in your new dedicated parking space under the roof, directly outside the main door." "What?" "You've heard me, girl. If you don't already have a child seat for Dolly, you should acquire one. Now get out of here." Debbie looked at me for a moment. She shook her head, turned, grabbed up Dolly, and departed. I noticed the Honda minivan when I came in the morning. Deb wasn't at her desk, so I started making coffee. I went in and turned on my computers. I heard her heels in the hallway. I turned and watched as she noticed the hot coffee on her desk. She turned to look at me. Her features broke into a stunning smile. She walked into my office, closing the door behind her. She approached me and gazed up at me. She reached up, pulled my face down, and kissed me with her arms around my neck. Her lips parted, and her tongue touched mine. She pushed me away slightly. Why are you so good to me?" Okay, let's see. First, you earn it every day. This place is running more smoothly than it ever has. Things are completed on time with minimal errors. For the first time, I see everyone smiling. And if that is not enough, simply being near you makes me happy. Her eyes searched. Is everything I've said true? Hey, you know me well enough to know I don't lie. I tell it how it is, John. I need your help. I haven't been able to afford good steaks until now. I just purchased a few last night. I also purchased a charcoal grill and some charcoal. I've never done this before. Could you show me how tonight? Sure, I'd love to. I should confess that I have another reason for inviting you over. Really? Yes. My daughter has been pestering me all week to have you over for dinner. She's getting very insistent about it. She really likes you. She usually dislikes men, but she thinks you're wonderful. She reddened. I agree with her on this. Now, consider that wonderful minivan. I cannot accept it. Don't you like it? We love it. It is simply too much. Hey, the vehicle is 2 years old and has been sitting for nearly a year. It is extremely economical to run. You must run errands for the company. Do I need to go out and get you something better? Better? No, nothing could satisfy me more. It contains everything. It is packed with extras. It's perfect, but it's too much. So, we do have a 10-year-old pickup truck. You could utilize it to rattle and install a lot. We can allow your secretary to use the Honda. What? I plan to use it. She smiled. John, do you play me like a fiddle? Not really. Hey, you talked me into going to daycare the first time we met. You do a good job of maneuvering me. I apologize. I do not mean to. Please don't get angry with me. Hey, that is why I hired you to get me to do things I dislike. That's what a good assistant does. You keep me punctual for meetings. You get me to my appointments on time and prepared. You send a card to each employee for their birthday, anniversary, or other special occasion. Every day, people approach me and express gratitude for the cards. I need you. I need to keep you happy. I do not do that. The payroll girl does. That girl. That is a load of crap. You recommended to her that it would boost morale. She told me how it happened. I'm the only one you tell what to do. You asked everyone else to do something. You recommend they do something. Me? You tell what to do. She giggled. It works, right? 1. What time should I come by for dinner tonight? Actually, I need to know what time you want to eat. Well, why don't you go home and change and come right over? I forgot to tell you. The grill is still in the box in the van. It was too awkward for me to carry in by myself. I will be there as soon as I can. Okay. No school tonight? No, they do not have it on Friday nights. No one would show up. The 2 adorable little women loved the steaks, baked potatoes, and corn on the cob. All were done on the barbecue. After dinner, we played cards. They beat me terribly at Go Fish. I took them to a local Dairy Queen for dessert. We had a terrific time and got sloppy in the car. I helped Deb get Dolly ready for bed. Deborah and I sat and drank a unique wine I got from a nearby winery. Finally, I knew it was time to go home. I asked if I could see them tomorrow. Deb stared at me intently and didn't answer. I waited a bit and responded, Okay, I guess you people are busy. I'll see you at work. John, I need to talk to you. That terrified me. And I come on too strong. I told her that I was listening. She said, I know you always listen to what I say, but you're not receiving my messages. What am I missing? John, I believe I need to release you from your vow to me. I believe I need to locate another employment. My heart has ceased pounding. Why? I thought you liked your job. What's wrong? I owe you so much that I'll never be able to repay you. I honestly don't know what to do. You don't owe me anything. Nothing. I got far more from you than I gave. How could this be? I haven't given you anything. Yes, you did. The times I've spent with you, as well as with you and Dolly, have been the most treasured of my life. Your compassion for an elderly man saved my life. You are the sweetest female I've ever known. If I weren't so old, I'd catch you with all my might. To be honest with you, Debbie, I should not have said it. I guess you were correct. You need a young man of your own age. She stared at me. What do I hear here? She appeared puzzled. Am I hearing correctly? Are you implying that due of your age you will not catch me? Are you saying you love me? Yes, I apologize. I do not want to embarrass or intimidate you, but yeah, I do love you with my whole heart. I observed her closely as I poured forth my heart. Her attractive face lit up with a huge smile. She jumped into my lap and passionately kissed me. She interrupted the kiss and sprayed kisses all over his face. "John, honey, I love you too. Dolly cares deeply for you. I want you tonight. I want to wake up in the morning with you in my bed. I'm not sure how to gratify you. You need to teach me about love." I realized I had a stupid smile on my face. She kissed me again and whispered, "John, I don't know much about love, but I know you are the most attractive man I have ever encountered. I fell in love with you the first day I started working for you." She massaged my cheek and spoke softly to me. She said, "I meet and talk to young guys at school all the time. They're like immature children. They don't care about anyone other than themselves. They are shallow and lack depth of character. You are exactly the opposite, and I adore that about you." I put my lips to hers, silencing her. It was a long and sweet kiss. I scooped her up and brought her into her bedroom. She kissed me lightly and lovingly. "John, cuddling like this when we're done is almost as good as loving. I adore this dreamy, peaceful feeling of satisfaction and being full of your affection." She giggled. "I hope you can dance as well on your feet as you do lying on your back." "Dance? Yes, sweetie, dance. I love to dance. Mama and my uncle were excellent dancers. I even taught dance for the Arthur Murray Studio throughout my final 3 years of high school. As a girl, I fantasized about marrying a tall, strong, gorgeous man who would dance with me into the sunset on our honeymoon. Well, 3 out of 4 isn't too awful. Your performance in bed cancels out the dance. I can do without the dancing, but I love your beautiful love. There is no way I can live without that." I considered what I needed to do Monday so that I would have enough free time to arrange for our marriage license. Blood tests, honeymoon, and where we'd reside, and numerous more things. Eureka! I'd simply unleash this little dynamo in my arms loose on the problems, and they'd be arranged in an instant. I gazed down at her and was welcomed with a smile and beautiful, clear blue eyes. She grinned. I was watching. "You think, I know you found a solution to your difficulty. Can I help you?" I told her exactly what I was thinking. She smiled and closed her eyes, stating, "No problem. I have everything in my desk. Get back to sleep." I tried sleeping, but the difficulties persisted. I watched the love of my life snuggle against my side. She grinned as I slowly opened my eyes. "I really love you. There are no problems that we cannot handle in a few minutes. The most important is that I never want to sleep without you again for the rest of my life. Do you have room for Dolly and me? Where do you live? Yes, I have 3 bedrooms. Currently, the unit has 2.5 bathrooms. We can move you today." She nestled into me, moved her hand to my face, and pulled me down for a kiss on the cheek. "See, one problem has already been fixed. I need to potty and brush my teeth before I can give you a proper kiss. Okay, go for it." She reappeared with a towel tucked around her. She grinned as she rushed from the bedroom and into the living room. She was back in seconds, clutching a little notebook. She slept in bed with me. She leafed through the book and showed me a page. The page's title was Marriage Information. It included addresses, phone numbers, and hours of operation for several locations, including the Clerk of Court, License, Notary 6, and our building. There was a section where I could make decisions on banking, credit cards, car titles, insurance, auto, life, health, and house ownership. I gazed at her. "How long have you been planning this?" She giggled. "Ever since I met you. I did all of this after you fell asleep last night. I could not sleep. I tossed and turned with all of this on my mind. I got up and worked on it for an hour. Then I remembered you in bed and felt compelled to join you. I have to resist the impulse to touch you all the time, give in to your urges. I enjoy that as well. Everything went like clockwork. We were married in my office on Monday afternoon, just Debbie and Dolly, several witnesses. The notary and I were present. Dolly was overjoyed and excited. She wanted me to hold her all the time. Debbie had the same idea. Dolly was in my left arm while Debbie held my right arm. I could not have been happier. Both of them were thrilled with their new home. It was a slightly longer drive from the office. Deb discovered a young man. She was preparing to take up most of her day-to-day responsibilities. Jeff Petrino was a gorgeous 30-year-old man with an athletic build. I was dissatisfied with it, but said nothing. The next morning, I observed Debbie was busy with Jeff. I spent most of my time in the secretarial pool, where I spoke with Joe and the pool's manager. I glanced the gals over. There was one that I did not recognize. She was really lovely and youthful. I asked Betty her name and explained what I wanted. Betty grinned. I understand exactly what you desire. She will arrive in your workplace in the morning, ready to take dictation. I walked inside the drafting division to check on some fresh, large-scale drawings of new sections' walls. I was creating a universal building. When I returned to my office, Debbie was demonstrating Jeff how our intercom system operated. It was almost closing time. I was carrying Dolly and said, "Hello, Debbie. Dolly and I are prepared to go. We'll be waiting in the atrium." "No, honey, wait for me. We've just finished up." She dashed to grab her jacket. She looked gorgeous in the small clothes she was wearing. She'd shed a lot of weight and was looking great. She only had 3 really excellent suites, but she mixed and matched them to create 9 outfits, including shirts, sweaters, and accessories. I gave her several more. I decided that Debbie needed a proper shopping expedition with Dolly and me. Deb grabbed my arm and we took off. "Where are we going?" she asked. I informed her that she would soon find out. When I stopped in front of a massive high-end department store, she gazed at me in awe. We got Dolly into her stroller. She was a little hefty to carry through a store, and if you set her down, she needed to be watched every second. We approached the women's clothing section and were welcomed by a young woman who introduced herself as Jane, a shopper's assistant, and asked if she could help us. I advised her that my lovely new bride need an entirely new wardrobe, including office dress, leisure wear, and lingerie. I handed her a piece of paper listing those items. I also included cocktail dresses and evening gowns, as well as shoes, purses, and other accessories. I showed the assistant $5,000 as the amount she needed to spend. The girl grinned at me. "How long have we got?" "Until closing hour tonight. If required, we can return in the morning." "Wonderful." Debbie moved in front of me, placed her hands on her hips, looked up at me, and asked, "Don't I have any say in this?" "You certainly do, dear. You choose what you want or need, and I'll tell you whether I like it or not. Your selection is final, but you will get a new wardrobe. Dolly's turn comes tomorrow." The assistant looked at Debbie. "Where did you meet a guy like this?" "Wow, I am quite lucky. I know it as well. My daughter and I would love him even if he was a poor homeless man who needed my help." The girl giggled. "This is a much better option. Believe me, this will be simple with your figure. We'll start with lingerie and figure out your sizes. Then, I believe we will locate business suits and dresses, then choose shoes and accessories to match them. Then we repeat the process with the others. We will maintain a running total." Debbie and the girl raced away. 2 hours later, I sat there cradling a sleeping doll in my arms, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. I must have fallen asleep and was awoken by a kiss from a smiling Debbie. "Your poor things. We'll call it quits for the time being and meet again tomorrow afternoon. Wait until you see all of the amazing stuff I have. I paid less than $2,500 for 6 suits, 6 dresses, shoes, shirts, sweaters, and accessories." When we arrived home at my condo, we were exhausted from moving boxes into her dressing room. The neighboring walk-in closet was nearly empty, even if it housed all of her clothes. She began opening boxes and putting them away. I promised her I'd open the boxes if she put them where she wanted them. I opened the boxes and carefully laid them on the bed. Deb took them, although the journey was significantly faster. Then I quickly got ahead of her. I went to my freezer and checked to see what was available for dinner. Not much. I inquired if she liked Chinese or Italian. Deb mentioned how much they enjoy Chinese food. I found a menu for the nearby Chinese restaurant. We chose a combination dish for 2. I instructed the person who accepted my purchase to select the best sellers they had. The girl thought it was a clever approach to order because I'd get the best cooked things. The cuisine was extremely nice. Dolly enjoyed the fortune cookies. She only had a portion of 1 cookie, but she opened them all and requested that we read the fortunes to her. She took them really seriously. After she finished the final cookie, she handed me the message. "Read it, Daddy. Read it." I examined it thoroughly. "You are a really lucky girl. It says your daddy will take you shopping for new outfits tomorrow. Be a good girl, and you will receive extra goodies." Her eyes brightened. Was this for me? I do not know. It could not be for me. I looked at Debbie. "Do you have a daddy who will purchase some dresses?" "No. You are not my daddy. We already knew you'd purchase me additional outfits. It needs to be for Dolly." The next day's shopping went smoothly, and both girls purchased a lot of items. When we came home and had everything put away, Debbie showed me a website she enjoyed. She showed me everything. Victoria's Secret. She still had a little money from her shopping trip in town, so I urged her to grab some summer clothes so that if I could finish certain jobs, we could go on a week-long honeymoon somewhere in the islands. I let her spend an additional $1,000. I knew she was going to look adorable in several of those ensembles. She had modeled some of her new outfits for me, and she looked fantastic in anything she put on her figure, making the clothes appear beautiful. There was one garment that appeared to be painted on her torso. I knew she'd struggle to dance in it because of the pencil-narrow top. She was so pleased with everything, I knew it was money well spent. A happy bride is a desirable bride. Deborah was very pleased. I knew I would reap the benefits of that. I brought Dolly into my lap after she had fallen asleep in bed, and we had a few kisses. I pulled her back and asked, "Honey, may I suggest that you call your mother and tell her about us?" She considered it for a few minutes. "I was considering doing it a while back. I still love them. I believe they know where I am or were till a few days ago. Should I do it now? It's been over 3 years since I left. I believe you should talk to your mother and tell her how you are. I think you should get back together. I am sure they wanted you to do what they believed was best for you. They didn't believe she had such a difficult and capable daughter." Her cheeks streamed with tears. "Is that how you think of me? Just a little of how I perceive you. I did not include beautiful, charming, intelligent, and determined, and a lot of other things." Deb stood up, grabbed up a wireless phone, and phoned a number. She listened and then said, "Hi, Mom. My name is Debbie." "Yes, it's me. How are you and Uncle Bill?" She grinned as she told her mother that she missed both of them. She explained that she had a daughter named after her grandmother. She told her mother she had recently married the best spouse in the world and wanted to share her happiness with her family. They spoke for an hour. She hung up the phone and rushed up to me, tears streaming down her cheeks. She jumped into my lap and passionately kissed me. "John, you were fantastic. I am delighted you made me do it. Mom was delighted to hear from me. Uncle Bill, too. They want us to come see them soon." I asked where they lived. She claimed they lived in the small town of Melrose, Florida, which was less than an hour away. I gazed at her. "The day following tomorrow is Sunday. So how about that?" Deb smiled. "I will phone them in the morning." "Okay." I nodded. Debbie got up and said she was going to put Dolly to bed and that I could come in a few minutes and kiss her goodbye. As I approached Dolly's door, I overheard them talking. Debbie was praying with Dolly. They prayed to God to bless their loved ones and themselves, as well as to keep them safe. Dolly exclaimed, "Daddy!" And Debbie responded, "Yes, sweetie." Daddy. We love him most of all. I walked in the door and hugged them as they hugged one another. I took up Dolly and hugged and kissed her. She kissed and hugged me back. I told her I loved her and told her to sleep well. Tears streamed down my cheeks when she stated she loved her mother and father as much as she could. She was extremely kind. I adored both of my girls. I hoped we'd have another one soon. I was busy preparing breakfast when Debbie called her mother. When she told me we were planning to meet on Sunday, she smiled broadly. She didn't elaborate, and I decided not to inquire. A Saturday afternoon shopping trip. It was soon time to find a lovely conservative outfit for each of my daughters for a visit to Grandma's place. They eventually agreed on nearly identical clothing. Both wore denim skirts, black turtleneck sweaters, and denim jackets. Dolly wore black tights and small black boots. Her mother looked stunning in black tights below knee-high black boots with heels. They both wore bright red ball caps, their golden hair in ponytails out the back. They were extremely cute alone. Deb looked stunning in a rural casual style. I'm wearing trousers, a light blue shirt, and a navy blue blazer with sneakers. Debbie led me to the massive ancient home. When we came to a stop under the portico, the door opened. A charming older woman, followed by an older gentleman, greeted Deb warmly. Debbie and her mother hugged and cried together. I took Dolly out of her child seat, held her hand, and walked up to the older man. I held out my hand. "You must be Uncle William. I am John Nelson." He firmly gripped my hand. "You are correct, Mr. Nelson." He smiled widely. "This lovely little girl must be Dolly, my niece." "Yes, sir. This is our daughter, Dolly. Dolly, say hello to Uncle William." The elderly gentleman knelt to one knee and extended his arms to Dolly. She grinned and curtsied. "I am pleased to meet you, sir." Tears streamed down the old man's cheek. "I am delighted to meet you, Dolly. May I pick you up and introduce you to your grandmother?" Dolly looked at me. I nodded, and she said it was fine. He snatched her up and said, "Sis, I've got someone here." "Want to meet your granddaughter? Her name is familiar. She's named after our mother." The elder woman swung around and gave the child a wide-eyed glare. Her hands rose to her face. "My God, she is so lovely." She extended her arms in Dolly, twirled around, and grabbed for me. Dolly cried, "No, I want my daddy." I rushed to get her and cuddle and console her. Debbie and her mother appeared stunned. I embraced Dolly and murmured a question to her. She whispered the answer into my ear. I stepped away a few ways and spoke quietly to Dolly. I explained how I felt about the situation. She nodded her head. "Yes, Daddy, I'll do it." I carried her back to the others. I looked at them. Dolly is a little terrified of Debbie's mother. Debbie Deb seemed to break down and cry whenever she talked about her mother. Dolly doesn't understand why she feels terrified of Debbie's mother. "Debbie, are you terrified of your mother?" Debbie shook her head and answered, "No, I adore Mama." I hugged Dolly close to my chest. "I adore you, Dolly, and I would never allow anyone injure you. Your mother cried because she loves her mother and misses her very much. There was a mistake and she couldn't return home. The error has been addressed. You can now hug your mommy's mommy. Wouldn't that be fun? She seems like a kind person. Your mother is overjoyed to meet her, is not she?" Dolly looked at me. "Will you be right next to me?" "Yes, I'll be right here with you." "Okay." I smiled at Deb's mother and brought Dolly up to her. Mrs. Summers softly placed one hand on each side of Dolly's face. "I love you, Dolly." My mommy's name was also Dolly. Dolly gazed at Debbie. "Did you know her mommy's name was also Dolly?" "Yes, sweetie. I adored my mommy's mommy, and I wanted my baby to have a name." Dolly gazed at her mother's mother. "Are you going to hurt my mother anymore?" Mrs. Summers shakes her head. "No, sweetheart. Never again." Dolly stared back at me. I nodded. She turned back to Mrs. Summers. "You can kiss me right now." I stepped back as the mother, grandma, and group made friends. We have all moved into the house. Dolly sat on her grandmother's lap, appearing content. Debbie smiled at me lovingly, and I smiled back. Uncle Bill grinned and stated, "Mr. Nelson, I recognize you now. We met briefly before you proposed a new clubhouse for our country club, a few months ago. All we did was shake hands. I told him I still didn't remember him. I distinctly remembered the occasion, but not him. He noted that the team still had 3 more proposals to consider before making a choice. He stated that my presentation was far and away the best thus far. We enjoyed a lovely meal, and Dolly and Mrs. Summers were best friends. By then I was simply referring to Uncle Bill as Bill. I really like him. He admitted that forcing Debbie have an abortion was the biggest mistake of his entire life. I grinned. "Bill, I hope I never have an aggressive confrontation with my wife. I've never seen a more dedicated opponent. She is incredibly intelligent, focused, and resembles a small pit bull. She will immediately go for the jugular. She began working for my company approximately 6 months ago. On her first day, she independently investigated, designed, and advocated a daycare center for the building. It was approved 2 days later and operational in 2 more days. She now oversees my entire firm. She is my personal assistant, and she is small. She has overhauled the majority of the departments in my organization. She has transformed the way people do things, and production has increased dramatically. She took over for 2 of the department heads I let go. She addresses all office problems before they reach me. I've never seen anyone else organize things as she does. My profits are boosted by 15%. She took over completely due to increasing efficiency. Most importantly, her smile makes everyone happy, especially me. She rarely goes without a smile on her face. I assume I don't need to tell you that I am madly in love with your niece. No, I see that it's reciprocal. I am so delighted for her. We always got along well until she became pregnant. She said she would not kill her unborn child no matter what I said. I informed her that I would pay for the operation. The next morning she was gone. She walked away with what she carried on her back. We searched for her for months. There was no trace of her. If she lived in this region, she couldn't have had a regular job, stayed in a hotel or motel, or done anything that would leave her name on paper. We gave up for over a year. Her sister was a piece of junk, but Debbie was a gem. It was a wonderful afternoon. Granny asked Dolly to spend a day or two with her, but Deb and I believed she was too young. I didn't mention it. I wasn't prepared for that yet. Dolly only spent roughly half of her days at the new daycare. The remaining time was spent in Deb's office or with me. She was instantly welcomed into any office on her floor. Debbie was a hands-on manager. She visited every workplace every day. She asked a lot of questions, and our personnel quickly realized that "I don't know" was not an acceptable response. If you desired a happy manager, the appropriate response was, "I'll find out." Then you got an encouraging smile or a pat on the back. If she was delighted, she would gladly compliment you and you on a job well done. Everyone desired her smile. A frown was heartbreaking. Debbie noticed the new secretary seated at Debbie's former desk. She walked into my office with a grimace on her face and closed the door. She approached me and inquired about the new girl's progress. I said fine, but she doesn't kiss as well as you do. She glanced at me, a tear falling down her cheek. I jumped up and grabbed her in my arms. "I am only teasing. I'll never know if another female kisses better than you. I will give you and Dolly all of my kisses for the rest of my life." Deb gazed up into my eyes and a smile spread across her face. "Really? Do you mean this?" "Of course, won't. All of my kisses. Hugs too. Of course, that may change." "What? Well, you might have to share anything in the future?" "No way. Not sharing? Never." "You mean I can't kiss our newborns?" "Okay, maybe in that scenario." But she grinned. The small chick outside does not qualify as a newborn. We were both working hard to complete our projects before taking a week off for our honeymoon. I passed past Deb's office and looked in to see her and Jeff standing at her desk, looking at some documents. He was standing a little behind her, and he leaned back to look at her while she leaned forward over the desk. I noticed him swiftly lean forward and look where she pointed. I continued to my workplace. Later that day, I was returning from a quick trip to the daycare to see Dolly, and I felt the need to use the men's restroom. I was sitting in a stall when a group of males came and started speaking. One guy said, "Yeah, and she has the smallest bum in the world. Every day, she becomes more comfortable with me. I know the old fart can't keep that tiny hottie satisfied." The other guy talked. "Best of luck." "I would be cautious, though. Messing with the boss's wife could jeopardize your employment." "BS, she manages everything around here, even him." When she says, "Jump," he responds, "How high, dear? Simply watch yourself. If you had such a wife, you would." Shocked. "So keep an eye on her." "Yes, but she informed me that we will be traveling out into the field to various job sites in the following day or two. That will be my opportunity to really hit on her. Then she will be mine." I've never missed a day. I heard their urinals flushing and the door opening and closing. I returned to my office and spotted Debbie and Jeff laughing together as I walked past. I sat at my desk for a bit, then hit the intercom. "Debbie, if you are not too busy, please come in here for a while." 5 minutes later, she walked through my door. Jeff was just behind her. She smiled. "Hello, honey. What do you need?" I smiled at her and then looked at Jeff. "Jeff, please close the door behind you. Wait in Mrs. Nelson's office. She'll be with you shortly." I stood up and took her into my arms, kissing her passionately. I looked up and saw him observing as he slowly closed the door. She giggled. "I love it, if that is all you want." "No, I want you to fire Jeff." "What? He is doing well. He has only been here a few weeks. He is still serving his probation time. You do not have to provide a reason." She was perplexed. "Why isn't this enough? I asked you to do it." "That does not solve my question." "Why, Debbie? You are responsible for handling my business for me. I have given you entire freedom to run it. I've never questioned a decision you made. I've made a request. You make the decision." Debbie studied me for a moment before turning and walking out the door. I smiled to myself. I knew she'd make the correct decision. Several hours later, at closing time, I heard her heels hit the floor and looked up to see her bright smile. She said, "Hello, honey. Are you prepared to go home?" "I certainly am. Let's go." She grabbed my arm and gripped it hard as we walked to the ground floor in the crowded elevator. She rubbed on me, so I looked down at her. She smiled in her mouth. "I love you," I spoke in a normal voice. "I adore you too, sweetheart." Debbie giggled. "I agree." One of our renters, a senior partner in a law company, asked, "John, why don't you guys get a bed?" "Hello, Irving, that is where we are going right now." "John, if my wife was that attractive, I would not let her go this far away from one." "No, Irv. If I were as smart as you lawyers, I'd have a high bed in my office like you." "Hello, we were all Boy Scouts. Be prepared. I know if my wife looked like Debbie and worked with me all day, it would get a lot of use." I laughed. "Hey, there's a thought. It never occurred to me." Debbie giggled. "Bull, that isn't something you tell me every day. You say, 'Wait until we arrive home. Then you can just play with Dolly.' But my love, you are worth the wait." The elevator door opened and we hurried to get Dolly from daycare into the car. Deb said, "Aren't you going to ask whether I fired Jeff? Why don't you fire him?" I hadn't considered it that way, but you were correct. "Will you tell me why he had to leave? I will inform you if I believe it is necessary. I guess I know." Anyway, one of our employees requested to see me in his office. He informed me that Jeff was telling everyone that he and I were going to have a sexual encounter within the following 3 days. He thought Jeff's comments were improper, regardless of the truth. He said he thought I should know about it. I thanked him and inquired whether he believed the story. He answered no, but he thought I should know about it. "Good day, guy. Promote him as soon as we have the chance. Did you know something? Did you fire him before or after receiving the information?" "Approximately 30 minutes earlier." "Why?" "I see. It was a test to see if I could avoid firing him." "Right. Sort of. Well, I thought about it and realized you would never do it unless you had a very good reason. And that there was a reason why they didn't inform me. I am disappointed that you did not fully trust me. If the tables were turned, would you put me to the test?" Debbie laughed. "Probably. We're both learning to trust one another. You must learn to trust when your trust has been damaged. You too are learning." I answered, "Well, honey, I must admit that firing Jeff bothered me for some reason. I've always felt like I knew him from somewhere. The feeling was insufficient to prevent me from performing what you requested of me. I feel no remorse." "What do you want for dinner tonight?" I grinned. "You?" About 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang, and I rushed to answer it as the door opened. A big revolver was positioned between my eyes. I stepped back, and the man with the pistol said, "Freeze! Don't move or I'll blow your brains out." I froze. I recognized the man with the gun. It was Jeff Petrino. I composed myself. "Good evening, Mr. Petrino. How can I help you?" Deb said, "Jeff, please put down the gun so we can talk about this before it gets too far. Get out so I can see you." "Where's my daughter? Your daughter?" "Yes, Dolly is our daughter, yours and mine. Debbie, yours and mine. She should be raised by you and me, her mother and father, not a stranger." "You're wrong, Jeff. John is Dolly's father. We've been going together for 4 years. We couldn't marry until he could obtain a divorce." "Where do you suppose you know me from?" "You worked at the downtown Carter Brothers department store in Ocala." "I worked there too. You were the manager of the ladies' shoe department." "Sorry, Jeff, I had never worked in Ocala before I started working for John. The first worked as a secretary at a Gainesville auto dealership. Sorry, but you've got the incorrect girl." "How well did you know this girl? Have you dated for a long time?" "Well, I didn't know her very well. I saw her frequently, but we didn't meet until a business Christmas party." I was watching the pistol drop lower as he spoke to Debbie. He was completely focused on Debbie. Now I'm hitting him on the side of the head as hard as I can. He dropped like a rock. I grabbed the pistol soon as it hit the floor. Deb was on him in an instant, kicking him as hard as she could. Right at the balls. "You understand, good son of a jerk. Will you assault me?" She kicked him in the head and face multiple times, screaming and cursing as a deputy sheriff seized and held her. Then suddenly 6 deputies appeared in my apartment. When things cooled down and Jeff was in jail, we discovered that the pizza delivery man saw Jeff pointing a gun at us and slipped out, calling the police on his cell phone. We checked on Darlie and discovered her soundly asleep in her bed. I paid for the pizza and left him a $50 tip. We were compelled to sit down and provide statements on what had happened. The deputy brought his laptop computer in and looked up information about Debbie's assault case. He stated that Jeff would face charges in that instance, as well as assault with a deadly weapon, house invasion, and maybe other felonies. After the deputies had left, we heated up the food and ate a little dinner. Neither of us had much of an appetite, so we mostly sat and cuddled. She looked up at me. I don't remember seeing him before he started working for us. Us. I believe you subconsciously remembered him, but your mind blocked it out to prevent you from experiencing the trauma of the assault. It's possible that you were drugged at the time, and it felt more like a horrible dream than reality. Or it's likely that you didn't get a good look at his face since it was dark or he was covering your eyes. Deb looked up at me. I really hope they lock him away for a long time. Wow, you really decked him. How was your hand? I stated that it hurt some. It'll be okay in the morning, Deb remarked. Let me see it. Look, it is completely puffed up. We need to put some ice on it. When she returned with a bowl and some ice, I commented, Honey, you were pretty slick in confusing him as to who you are. He wasn't sure what to believe. So I thought I'd distract him enough for you to overpower him or convince him he was with the wrong female. You were correct. He had the wrong girl. I'm delighted you have ballet slippers on instead of the stilettos you wore to work. You would have murdered him. Hey, no one threatens my baby or my man and then leaves away without anything to remember me by. She raised my hand and looked at it again. She carefully dried it and kissed it. She shuddered. Darn, I nearly lost. Do you deny? Tears streamed down her face as she shook fiercely. I grabbed her close to me and hugged her till she calmed down. I told her to go get ready for bed while I locked up. We cuddled and chatted for a while. I promised her that both of us would receive concealed weapon permits. I then asked her to phone a nearby Marshall weapons store and see if there was anything they might recommend for us to carry until. We received our permissions. I was especially concerned about something she might use. She was stunningly lovely, tiny, and petite. She seemed to be an easy target. She mentioned that she grew up somewhere near Melrose. We went to bed, hugged, and touched each other until we were asleep. My hand pained me until I stood up and wrapped it in an ace bandage. I was just getting started when a small pair of hands removed the bandage from my hands. Honey, you can't do it all by yourself. Let me do it for you. She wrapped it lightly but firmly, and it made a significant difference when I tried to sleep. When I bought something with my hand, it did not wake me up in the morning. I thanked her profusely for assisting me. She grinned. John, my dear husband, you need to learn to let me help you more. Every time you bumped your hand, you groaned, waking me up. I wake up. Anytime you get out of bed, I absolutely adore doing things for you, so please let me assist. Okay, my hand was a little hampered, but because the majority of my key inputs are touchscreen, I wasn't slowed down much. My sweet wife checked on me every half hour and occasionally rewrapped my hand. She said we were both scheduled for a concealed weapons course at a local gun shop at 4 p.m. for the following 5 days. I asked if she'd ever shot a gun. Yes. Uncle Bill taught me how to shoot revolvers and automatic pistols. I've shot rifles and shotguns, but mostly pistols. I shot .22, .38 S9, miss, and .45 sec. I've shot a 0.44 Magnum before, but I'm not very good at it. It's too heavy for me to hold for very long, so I take my shots quickly. I do admire the strength it has, however. I suppose I'll have to get some advice from you, Bull John. I saw that picture of you as a Marine. You were adorable and had a chest full of medals, including marksmanship for rifle and pistol. I was not snooping. I was looking for an envelope and came across it in the middle drawer of your den desk. There's nothing in our house. Cannot see. This is our home. And I keep no secrets from you. I hope you never find any. Darn. Now I'll have to look everywhere. Cranny, you can search all you want. She looked at me for a moment before smiling. Baby, I know you. You're a terrible liar. You simply cannot look me in the eye. If you were lying, even when you were joking or teasing, I adore that. And I love you with all of my heart. After we got ready for work in the morning, I took Debbie to see my father. I showed her my wall gun locker, which is hidden behind a false wall in the closet. There were more than 20 guns hidden there, along with enough ammunition for each. I told her to choose one to take to our class that afternoon. Deb surprised me when she chose an old Ivory Johnson 9-shot, point to a revolver with a 2-inch barrel. She smiled up at me. Uncle Bill owned one of these. I loved it. Then something else caught her attention. She removed a Walther PPK automatic in .380 caliber. She eased the slide back to see if it was loaded. She looked up at me. "Can I try this one too?" Uncle Bill owned one of these in .32 caliber. "What do you think about .380? I prefer it over the .32. They are identical with the exception of the cartridge. I believe that having a gun that you enjoy and are comfortable with is more important than the power of the cartridge. My father, for example, told me that he used to have an old master pistol who told him that shooting the perp in the left eye made no difference, whether it is a .22, .4, or .5. He died. A missed cannon shot. Do not hurt him. None at all. In the early 1950s, he was the sheriff of Belleville, Texas, and he carried a gun at all times. Johnson. Exactly like that one as an off-duty weapon. He had a number of reasons. He liked it. He claimed it was lightweight. Extra ammunition did not weigh much either. It didn't cost a quarter as much to practice with. He claimed that you could shoot the pistol around a corner with your nose up against it and touching the back of your hand without risking damage to your nose from recoil or a broken slide. There are a few things to consider. I agree that accuracy is the most crucial consideration. If you punch someone in the face, it is bound to be more effective than simply the noise. We left work early and proceeded to drop off at Grandma's place and then to the Martial Arts Center and met the owner. We told him of our experience and of the fact that we had Dolly, a typical toddler who had her little fingers and everything. We wanted some form of self-defense gear that was compatible with little children. Locked-up guns are not easily available. He showed us an instrument called a self-defense baton. The one he liked the best is an innocent gadget that looks to be a compact flashlight, about 8 inches long, and a belt case. With a snap of the wrist, it extends to 21 inches long. He provides a 1-hour class that covers everything you need to know about it, including hands-on demonstrations. We bought 2 of them and scheduled the session for the following week at the gun shop. The individual we spoke with assured us that we would pass both the written and practical tests with ease. We went to the firing range and tested both rifles. She preferred the PBKs, and after half an hour she was able to put every shot from the 7-round clip into the black section of the silhouette targets at 10 and 15 yards. We got her a clip-on holster for the Walther. She also discovered numerous gorgeous purses with built-in holsters that suit the PBKs wonderfully. She received them in black, white, and brown. I chose my Smith & Wesson .40 caliber, military and police automatic. I already had the shoulder and belt, but I purchased a fanny pack holster that I liked. We left with study materials for the concealed weapons training. We went back to pick up Dolly and had to show Granny and Uncle Bill what we had purchased. Bill liked the batons and stated he keeps something similar in his car for self-defense. He showed me a 3 8-inch steel rebar with 1 little nut and 2 larger nuts on the other end. Between the nuts was a rusted bit of steel sandwiched between 2 washers. Everything was covered with a faint rust. He grinned. That was much less expensive than the nice items you purchased. If I use it to protect myself and end up hurting someone, I can claim it is not a weapon. It's just something I saw and picked up on the street to protect myself. I tried it with threaded rod, but it bent too readily. I examined it and concluded that it appeared to have fallen off of a truck or trailer. Darn. A good idea. Following the incident with Jeff, I had our security team install disguised day and night vision TV cameras at the front and back entrances, as well as in the garage. The monitors were located at each door and on the main console. I made Debbie go to the shooting range 3 more times. The owner stated that Deb was already an accomplished shooter. I stated I had something else to teach her. When we were set up on the range, I instructed her to place the PPK in her purse and hang it over her right shoulder. I placed her on the firing line and set the target about 10 yards down the range. I urged her to take the gun and pointed to the target. She began to pull the pistol from the purse. "No!" I shouted. "Shoot through the purse. Just point and shot." She did. She did not make it. I let her take the revolver from the purse and forced her to shoot, holding the rifle down where the purse should be. She got a hit on her 3rd attempt. After 3 boxes of ammunition, she was able to strike the target with the gun stored in a plastic grocery bag by her hip. Even when facing either side of the target, she had mastered the skill of point shooting. I put her back to TF on, and she still hit the target the majority of the time. I went to get the owner. The gun was in her purse. I positioned her on the firing line with the target at 5 yards. I turned her so she was facing far to the left of the objective. I instructed, "Rapid fire, fire at will." She fired 6 shots in 2-shot groups with less than a second between them. I patted her on the back and turned the target backlight on. "Wow!" exclaimed the owner. The holes in the target lit up. All 6 rounds were directed at the target's kill region. She glanced up at me with anguish. "My purse is ruined, so I ruined it anyway." I removed the silk lining on that side of the divider and placed all of your belongings on the good side. You need to purchase comparable purses and have them changed. If you're dressed up in an evening gown and carrying a tiny clutch pocketbook or anything, you'll need to stick near me for protection. She grinned up at me. "I constantly turn to you for protection." "You are my hero," the shopkeeper said. "Could you shoot that?" "Good." Debbie gazed at him. "He puts that 0.40 in a plastic bag and performs well at twice the distance. Never gamble against him at darts or pool. He is simply uncanny." She smiled at me and continued, "There are other things he does that I can't tell you about but are also unbelievable." "I understand." I flushed when he looked at me and laughed. Now that's what I call a testimonial, and the look on her face makes me believe her. We both passed the written test, and our permits arrived in the mail many weeks later. We went to the shooting range around once a week for a few months before reducing it to once per month. My darling little wife was deadly, with the point reaching out nearly 10 yards. If she took her time and targeted at 25 yards, she would get 80% of her shots in a 1-inch 11/16. Number 10, center circle, 40 centimeters. The rest would be in the number 9 and number 8 rings. She consistently shot 30-round scores in the 280 and 290. I struggled to keep up with her. I believe she has improved her point-shooting abilities beyond mine. I suppose she starts missing on deliberately to avoid beating whenever we come close to the gun store. She insisted on stopping to shoot a few bullets. She still has the original purse. I used to teach her the point, shooting from the trunk of our caddy. The purse's front end has now been chopped away. The owner clears the range for her. When she shoots, she walks up to the firing line wearing a small sundress, a broad-brimmed sun hat, strappy little high-heeled sandals, and a pocketbook over her shoulder with her hand in it. 6 shots would be released in 3 groups of 2 in around a second and a half. She would remove the empty clip and place a new one in the range. Master would bring in the old target and then rush out to new targets in the shooting lanes. 2 lanes away, on both sides of her lane. The targets were edging closer to her. The range master responded, "Honey, you have targets on both sides. I want you to hit the target to the right. Then the one on the left, followed by the one on the right for 6 rounds. Start with the targets facing you for 4 seconds before flipping around." "Okay." Debbie smiled. "Right." There was a click when the targets displayed. 6 rounds erupted from her pocketbook as she twisted it from side to side before the targets vanished. She looked down and hurriedly changed the clips again. This is what she was taught. Never leave your firearm inoperable even for a brief period of time. That is when a well-trained adversary will strike. I adore that. Everything I informed my lovely wife about such matters was carefully obeyed, after each of us had discharged a few clips of ammunition. We went about our business. I know we were the only ones for whom he cleared the range. He did it for multiple reasons. He and the other guys enjoyed watching Debbie shoot and just seeing her walk by. We never stayed for very long. The range master told us of a website that sells a variety of ladies' holsters and purses for all situations. We purchased many, including a little clutch purse made of gold that could only retain the weapon if Debbie gripped the rear of the purse between her right thumb and fingers. The pistol would be ejected from the purse and slapped back into her hand, ready to fire. Debbie is a pleasure for female viewers. She typically wears high heels, short skirts, and provocative outfits. I'm not jealous of other men who are watching her. It's also one of my favorite pastimes. Debbie walked into my office one afternoon and closed the door. She smiled, pushed back my chair, and crawled into my lap. She kissed me firmly. "Honey, I've checked everything out. We're shocked. In every way, the condition is good. I've stopped taking the pill and want to go on a week-long vacation, wherever you wish to go. Mama and Uncle Bill will keep Dolly. She is now very comfortable with them. Okay, Mrs. Dynamo, get things organized. I'm thinking tropical. Warm beaches, fishing, and more. Get us packed and let me know when we're leaving. So, lover, we're leaving Friday, the day after tomorrow. From Gainesville, take Delta Airlines for a week at a clothing-optional adult resort on Grand Cayman Island. We return in a week. I couldn't stop grinning. Okay, how much will this cost? Less than 1 week's wages. Everything. I think we're all packed and ready. Sure, it was easy. Because it is not necessary to wear garments, one tiny bag in my makeup case should suffice. What? I do not believe you. Debbie giggled. Easy, my love. Clothing is optional, but I'm not sure I can do it. They told me that the clothing optional area is limited to one section of the resort, which includes a separate beach, a snack bar, and a swimming pool. I figured 2 large suitcases and 2 carry-ons. Our vacation was delightful. We only tried the clothing optional part once. It was a bit of a disaster. We proceeded to the optional section of the beach, located an unpopulated area, stripped, and went into the sea. We had fun playing in the water. Then we stretched down on our beach towels to soak up some sun. We both dozed off and awoke to an audience. One guy approached Deb and offered if she wanted to star in the adult film for large money. He was accompanied by a large, attractive man who was completely naked. He smiled and winked at Debbie. The person said he'd guarantee a good salary for a year. I mentioned that my wife is currently the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation. You must earn $9,000 per week and sign a 5-year contract. After that, you'd have to convince me to let her do it. He stared at her and then at me. You are kidding, right? If you mean how much she earns, I am serious. Including incentives, she earns nearly twice as much. The gathering grew, so Deb rose up and put on her bikini. Then she took up her towel and said, "Let us go, honey." I rose up and pulled on my trunks. Then we gathered our belongings and started up the beach. The corn guy followed us while still talking. Is she actually the CEO? She is the CEO of the largest architectural firm in Florida. He yelped. Gotcha. Now my partners and I are having a studio created at the largest firm in Florida. I know the name. Who is she working for? She works with Nelson Architects. Holy stuff. That's the correct name. When we were safe in our suite, she drew me around. Can I please you, Daddy? Can I? Can I giggle, honey? You can observe. Giggle. I grabbed her and held her at arm's length. Darn. She was beautiful. I'm so hot for you, John. Please make love with me right now. All right, no matter how much you beg, not being an adult queen. No, I simply want to be. Your queen, only for you. I'll do everything for you, but only for you. But if you accept his offer, you'll get to screw a number of males at once. Really? That sounds like so much fun. You simply need to sign one paper at start. Really? What is that? This is our divorce agreement. But I could never do it. Would you actually kick me out? What are your thoughts? She stared at me. Seriously? Yes, I really believe you would. I believe it would kill you to do so, but I believe you would. I pulled her onto the bed. Would you like me to go find the corn guy's body for you? Wait, I do not believe that is what you stated about me. But you now tolerate me. No, I've never merely tolerated you. I admire him. He is perfect. Maybe a little bigger would be excellent. You could audition for the corn guy. He may ask the attractive guy who was with him on the beach to try you out. God, I saw him. I couldn't believe he existed. I've never seen one like that before, even in photos of adult stars. Do you want me to call our attorney, Privates Clark, and have him fax us the divorce papers? I never signed that, ever. You know, I will never touch another man or let one to touch me. I believe you are. Simply want a job as an adult star. Hey, don't be. He saw me naked with excitement. He did not offer me a job. Don't feel awful, baby. It is not your fault. You have a normal size, but not a nice one. She giggled behind her hand. I stood up and left the room. I knew she was kidding, but what she said had the ring of truth about it. I needed to take a walk and clear my mind. I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, so I went aimlessly down the paved walkway. After a time, I looked up and realized I was in front of an unfamiliar resort. I looked behind me and noticed something familiar, so I ran back that direction. A stroll entered from the left, and I noticed a pair approaching me from a short distance away. The woman resembled Debbie. I sat on a bench against the wall near the door of our suite. I was in deep shadow, yet I could see them. Debbie said, "Thank you for walking me to my suite. I'm sure John is here or will be shortly. I had no idea that taunting him about his endowment would make him so unhappy. I don't believe he's little, unless you compare him to the guy that was with you earlier today. I know John is wonderful for me. I now know the dude is the corn guy." He said, "Hey, every man looks small next to me." I hope you did not tease him too much about that. That is the absolute worst thing you can taunt most males about. If you are not careful, it has the potential to ruin a man. He might be able to perform alongside other women. But for you, it may be like a cancer, eating into his ego. It can be almost impossible to cure. They had paused on the opposite side of the wall for me. Another issue I've noticed is that if the woman compares him to a large man, he may feel inferior to large men and assume that only a big man can truly fulfill you. That can be extremely heartbreaking for a man. Listen, I appreciate your support, but I need to find John. Good night. Her heels clicked down the sidewalk and she walked around the corner to see me. She smiled and rushed into my arms. I kissed her passionately and brought her into our chambers. She took a careful look at me. Honey, are you okay? I began removing my clothes as quickly as I could. I wasn't wearing much, so I was exposed ahead of her. She looked worried and tears streamed from both eyes. She stared at my eyes again. What is wrong? Why can't you feel excited? I am not a big guy who needs to please you right now. Her lovely face screwed up as she cried. She was sobbing while trying to talk. I couldn't let her down, telling her that I had heard what the Cornell guy had said about my reaction. Her eyes were still watery when she inquired whether I was okay. Given the limitations of my equipment, I shall try my best. We never saw the corn guy again. The rest of our honeymoon or vacation was calm and peaceful. We made love at least 3 times per day, and frequently more. We unwillingly departed Grand Cayman, but then couldn't wait to return home. We both missed Dolly a lot and had called her every day. The drive from the airport seemed to last forever. Dolly had been watching us from a window because she had exited the car before we did. She screamed, "Mommy, Daddy, I miss you!" I stood and watched the small child hug and kiss her mother. They both cried and sobbed. I was crying too, but I didn't want to interrupt their reunion. I was determined to get some presents. Deb and I had gone to get Debbie's mother and uncle when I heard Dolly scream, "Where's Daddy? Where is my daddy? I want my papa." Then I moved up behind her and took her into my arms, squeezing her as tightly as I could without injuring her. Dolly wept while hugging and kissing me. Debbie hugged and kissed them both. Deb's mother and uncle stood watching us. We eventually calmed down and entered the house. We were told that Dolly had been a wonderful little lady while we were away, and that she was always welcome to stay with them for as long as she desired. Dolly said she had a great time with them, but she asked us not to leave her again for a long time. Debbie and I told ourselves that we would not do it again for a long time. We returned to work on Monday, roughly a month before our vacation began. Deb had put notices saying we were looking for a graduate engineer to inspect job sites, handle difficulties, and guarantee compliance with our plans. Significant travel would be required. She had received over 100 applications, including resumes and references. Deb formed a team and developed norms and criteria for rating applications. Deb and the senior engineers would evaluate the top 20 candidates. All they were given on each candidate was their information. They were simply identified by a randomly assigned number. There were no names, sexes, marital statuses, ages, photographs, or other useless details. We recognized that many of those invisible items had a significant impact on how they would perform on the job. For example, a really attractive and young woman might be a riskier choice for this traveling position. We were down to the top 20 people. 4 members of the selection committee reviewed the top 20 files. These files contained every available information, such as name, age, love, and pictures. Each committee member was given 5 files and was tasked with rating them and selecting the best 5 to reduce the list to 10. After that, I would go through all 10 of them and rank the top 4. All of the others would do the same. We would aggregate the data, average the grades, and see what we got. We believed that combining all of these factors would yield a manageable number of candidates for interviews. I would resolve knots or other issues, and I had the last say. Debbie had a significant influence on my decisions, which was an unspoken fact. Most of the time, I trusted her instincts. It came down to 2 contestants. The top candidate was a stunning young woman with a master's degree in engineering. She was engaged to be married and was working as an assistant professor at Georgia Tech. She indicated that she had no issues with the travel needs. The number 2 candidate was Jamal Washington, a tall, well-built young guy. He had great academic ratings and glowing testimonials from his prior employers. He had previously worked for very good smaller companies doing virtually the same thing. He was attractive, eloquent, engaging, and full of self-confidence. He enjoyed his travels and was unattached. His resume was expertly constructed. It was a tough decision. I informed Deb that she could make the decision. Debbie cheated. She employed them both. Betty Johnson was hired as the assistant to the chief of our engineering department. Marty Martin was a great man who was long past the retirement age. Deb envisioned her as his potential replacement. Betty was really pleased with that. She hired Jamal Washington for the listed post. He worked out quite well for us. I saw him frequently, but I knew he worked with Betty on a regular basis. More importantly, Marty found Betty to be quite polite and extremely skilled as a practicing engineer with expertise in computer and CAD tools. She even showed me some new techniques that I had never seen before. She installed certain programs that made some current programs much more user-friendly. The youngster knew her stuff. Deb and I both liked Betty and her fiancé, and we invited them over for barbecues and pool parties. Debbie sat Dolly and me down at the kitchen table after we'd been home from our honeymoon for about 2 months. She sat between us, holding our hands. She stared at me. "John, I informed you that I needed to see the doctor for a standard checkup this afternoon. I actually had a problem that I needed to share with her. I was feeling pretty worried by then. Cancer, some illness. I suppose my hold injured her hand." She stared at me. "Are you okay?" "No, you scare me to death." Debbie laughed. "There are no sweets, nothing like that. I just wanted to let you know that we are expecting a new family member in a few months." Dolly squealed. "Goody, we are getting a puppy." Debbie smiled. "No, honey, not very good. You're going to have a younger sister or brother." I sat startled. I must have had a big smile on my face. Deb giggled. "I hope that grin indicates you are happier than Dolly." I sprang up, ran around Deb, and grabbed Dolly. I yelled, "Mom was about to have a kid. Mom is about to have a kid. Hooray! Mama is about to have a kid." As I danced around with Dolly. Dolly joined me in making me happy after understanding her mother was pregnant. She shouted as loudly as I did. Deb sat down and laughed with us. Dolly and I relocated to Debbie. Dolly went into her lap and gave her a kiss. Then I kissed her. My eyes were filled with years, so I moved back and glanced out the window. I see nothing. Thinking about what this meant to me. I was going to become a father. This child would be a part of me, carrying my blood to future generations. I believe every father experiences these emotions, as well as the understanding that the act of childbirth endangers the life of the woman he loves. This new life is my duty. In addition to the 2 girls, I am already accountable for their nurture and protection. I turned and moved Dolly, telling her how desperately I wanted to hug and kiss her mother. Deb flowed into my arms and we kissed for quite a while. It wasn't a romantic kiss, but one of pure love and adoration. I said to my wife, "I love you." "Thank you, John, for this lovely gift. I adore you too. Thank you to my husband. This will be our child, the fusion of the 2 of us into one entity. I've prayed for this, my closest love and best buddy." Dolly gazed at Debbie. "Mommy, I am happy. I'm going to have a sibling or sister. But next time, could you get a puppy?" I placed my hand on Debbie's stomach. It was still completely flat. She giggled. "No, sweetheart, I'm not showing yet. I'm more than 2 months along. I have a few months until I will. Will you join me for birthing classes?" "Of course. I would gladly go anywhere with you, my darling. I truly do not need to go. But I believe it would be beneficial for you to understand about the process and what to expect." "I completely agree. I am quite clueless about." "Exactly. It goes on. Naturally, I have a rough concept, but I want to learn more." "We have what? Another 7 months?" "Yes, it is about right." I stared at the young girl standing in front of me. Where would she place the baby? I'm significantly bigger than Jeff, Dolly's biological father. Could small wife safely carry a bigger baby? What about the twins? Triplets? Wow, I'm so astonished. Lots to think about. Why didn't I consider this before getting her pregnant and jeopardizing her health? "What is wrong, honey? You appear quite concerned about something." I drew her to me and hugged her tightly. I noticed that Dolly was not paying attention to us, so I told Debbie about my concerns. She explained, "Sweetheart, the good Lord foresaw that when he designed the female body. Except in rare situations, a woman's body adapts to accommodate a larger infant in a variety of ways. And where does that not occur? Modern medicine takes care of that. That is why I receive prenatal care. My doctor will monitor the size of our kid, examine me, and ensure that my birth canal is large enough to accommodate the baby. If it isn't large enough, there are a few alternatives. They can cause labor, so the baby arrives before it grows too big. Alternatively, they can deliver the baby by cesarean section. That is where they surgically remove the baby from the stomach. It is done hundreds of times every day without issue. Not on my love. It is not. "I'm afraid," Dolly said. "What is wrong, Mommy? Why is Daddy crying? Honey, everything is fine. Daddy is being stupid since he has no idea how babies arrive from Mommy's tummy. He is scared it will damage me. That's stupid, Daddy. Mommy told me everything about it. It hurts some, but mommies don't mind since they adore their babies." Deb smiled and nodded as if to say, "See, there's nothing to worry about. Even Dolly understands how much Daddy loves us, sweetie. He makes every effort to keep us safe from harm. Even yet, it's a good hurt." Dolly stared at me and then at Debbie. "He is an excellent father, isn't he?" "Yes, sweetie, he certainly is." We all embraced. After a few months, I saw a little bend in Debbie's tummy. I suppose she was delighted with that. She argued that this pregnancy was in every way superior than the previous one. Then she faced it alone and was terrified. This time, she had a beautiful husband to take care of all her needs. She was even happier than usual. I had no idea if she suffered from the typical morning sickness. Everyone commented on her glowing complexion. She had problems completing her work because everyone in the building was so concerned about her. Nobody would let her lift anything or open a door. They all ran to help her with whatever she needed. Everyone stopped her and asked how she was feeling. She admitted to me that as annoying as it was, she recognized it was because people truly cared about her. She stated that it was completely different from the last time when people shunned her because she was an unmarried mother-to-be. Debbie informed me she even bought a cheap ring to hide the looks. Then, she threw it because she believed it was a lie. She believed she had done nothing wrong, and that the baby she was carrying would also have done nothing wrong, and, if possible, disregard the opinions of uneducated people. She seems to relish physical contact with me more than ever. She couldn't get enough hugs and kisses. I felt it was cool regardless of where we were or what we were doing. She wanted to touch me. I loved it. Debbie was 7 months along and clearly pregnant when we decided to leave, work a little early, and swing by the farmer's market for some fresh vegetables for the company's picnic that weekend. She said that she was going across the street to the bank to collect some cash to use at the market, as they only accepted cash. Dolly and I were to pick her up at the bank. I was getting Dolly into her car seat when I heard the gunshot from across the street. I reflexively drew my revolver as I closed the door and peered across the street. Debbie was standing on the curb, calmly exchanging gunfire with 3 males attempting to get into a car. When the automobile jumped toward Debbie, I saw 2 of the men fall to the ground. I grabbed 4 rapid images before the driver vanished. Then I could not see Debbie. The car slowed, hit the curb, and then collided with a tree. I dashed across the street and discovered Debbie laying in the grass beside the car. She was straining to get up. I checked her out and helped her up. She replied she was all right and had tripped while getting out of the way of the car. There was still screaming coming from the bank, so I went there. There were other shots from the bank. I paused to peer around the corner and through the glass doors. One was shattered, and glass covered the sidewalk. A bank guard was on his stomach in a pool of blood, but he still held his gun, pointing at a man, holding a woman in front of him, and pointing it at the guard. I wished things had been a little easier. Johnson pointed to 2 revolvers instead of 1, but I did not. So I moved to a position where I had a clear shot and shot the robber in the head. He dropped his rifle and collapsed to the ground. I dashed to see if the woman was okay. Somebody yelled, "There's another crook behind you." I turned and fell to the ground. I heard 2 fast shots behind me, and a man emerged from behind a desk, clutching a revolver. There were 2 more shots, and he staggered. I fired 2 more rounds into his chest, dropping him. Debbie pulled me around and asked if I was okay. I asked her the same thing. She said, "Heck no." I damaged a fresh pair of pantyhose and a nice purse. I investigated and discovered nothing else wrong with either of us. The cops arrived. and Debbie and I handed up our firearms. The bank manager ran over and informed the police that our actions had saved several lives. 6 customers were shot. Only 1 died. 5 robbers were murdered. The police officer in charge allowed Debbie and me to leave the area and care for Dolly. The commotion and excitement had distressed the young tot, and because of our absence, I was able to send Debbie and Dolly back to our building to wait while things were straightened out. I was questioned long before being allowed to stay with Dolly while Debbie was questioned in our respective offices. Debbie, remember that our security cameras should have captured the majority of what happened across the street. As it turned out, the photographs captured the entire action from beginning to end, as did the bank's exterior and interior recordings. The detectives received fantastic coverage of everything that happened. I was finally allowed to take my family home, where we attempted to unwind. I attempted to remain calm as I admonished my lovely wife for engaging in a shootout with the criminals. I warned her she had endangered both herself and our unborn child. Unfortunately, the television aired a breaking story about a great husband and wife team who rescued many lives and thwarted a bank heist. Debbie was laughing at how silly we looked, falling all over ourselves, trying to avoid the automobile and not get shot. Her chuckles quickly turned into tears as she realized how close things were. I tried to console her, but we ended up crying together and comforting one another while watching the event unfold on a national news program. I switched to numerous channels, and we were astonished to see that all of them were covering the bank robbery. We saw a shot of several TV vehicles in front of our condo. The telephone started ringing. It was a Fox News reporter who wanted an. I informed him that the police had instructed us not to provide interviews until the preliminary inquiry was completed. Our phone was quickly filled with calls from people congratulating us on what we had accomplished. Later that morning, a group of sheriff's deputies led by the sheriff arrived at the residence and gave us the combined images from all of the surveillance cameras involved. Debbie was clearly seen heading out into the street as the burglars exited the bank. Debbie's right hand could be seen diving into her pocketbook. Flames burst from the purse in an instant. She dispatched 2 of the robbers. The third was knocked off his feet. All 3 bandits were shooting at Debbie, and branches and leaves were falling around her as bullets clipped them from the tree above her head. The other robbers attempted to flee the bank, but Debbie's next rounds wounded one of them, forcing them to retreat into the back. I appeared around then, gun in hand. The getaway automobile approached the scene. I appeared cool as I fired rounds into the driver, who ultimately died. Debbie was calmly reloading. As firing resumed from the bank, the pistol remained in her hand. Interior footage from inside the bank confirmed my account regarding the hostage scenario. Another bank thief was discovered severely wounded behind a desk. He was anticipated to recover. We were asked if we would participate in a news conference at the sheriff's office that afternoon. They stated that all news agencies would be represented. After that, we could give interviews if we wished. Debbie's story astounded even the sheriff. He couldn't believe that a stunningly beautiful, young, little, innocent-looking, expectant mother could stand and shoot a gang of bank robbers and win. I told the sheriff that my wonderful wife was the most amazing woman I'd ever met. I said, "If you want something done right, call my wife." His wide grin faded as he realized she would always win. He stated, "As a general rule, I oppose private citizens engaging in armed combat. It is quite perilous for all involved. This tiny lady got everything precisely right, as best we can tell. She didn't miss a single shot, even with bullets rushing past her ears. That is not something many highly trained deputies can do. I can't believe this little girl fired 7 shots, reloaded, and fired another 7 shots, resulting in 14 solid hits." He looked at me. "You did almost as well. You didn't fire as frequently, but you also didn't miss. What should you do? Practice all the time." "No, we all fire once a month. 24 rounds apiece." "Wow, that is not much." "No, Deb's a natural. Don't bet against her in darts or other hand-eye coordination games. You say she's a mother. She can't be that old, actually. She'll be old enough to drink fairly soon." The following few months proved difficult for us. We were in high demand for talk and new shows. Everyone, including his brother, wanted Debbie to endorse everything from hair products to diapers. I had to get nasty and limit her activities as her due date approached. Deb had difficulty turning down requests to appear on shows, and I was the mean and nasty guy who refused to let her do so. I would not allow her to schedule anything for a week before and 3 weeks after her due date. I went so far as to cut off her communication with everyone except her family. I would not even allow her to answer the phone. Close friends and family would call my cell phone and I'd answer it. She insisted on going to the office until she went into labor. She continued to follow her daily schedule, which I had her modify so that various department heads could visit her office. Jamal Washington was always her first appointment in the mornings. He always preferred to receive his instructions directly from her. Debbie and I took a few weeks off following the birth of baby boy. I wanted to be very involved in my son's care from the beginning. I bathed him, changed him, burped him, and held him frequently. When we returned to work, we kept his portable crib in Deb's office so she could care for him. He was a very easy baby to care for. He rarely cried and loved everyone. He'd smile and laugh at anyone who noticed him. I'd often look through Deb's office door and see her nursing Johnny. Yes, he is John Jr. I was late getting Dolly settled in at daycare one morning because she was working, and I entered Deb's office instead. On her way to my office, she was feeding Johnny in a small towel. She used to cover the baby. She was exposed while feeding the baby and talking on the phone. Jamal Washington, not 3 feet away, is staring at her. I paused, covered her jug, and continued walking. I looked back and saw Washington smiling. It irritated me. The next week, she informed me that she was going to make her office visits and would return soon. She said, "If Johnny gets hungry, call me." I asked, "Why don't you continue to let them visit you? It's a lot easy for you." She grinned at me and said she'd do it tomorrow, adding that she enjoyed to check how things looked in each office. I inquired who she noticed initially. She stated, "I always see Jamal first before he leaves on his rounds." I stared at her perplexedly. Why doesn't he see his department head, Marty or Betty? She stared at me. I do not know. That is how we have always done it since he arrived here. I don't like that. He should be getting his orders from his boss, not you. That's how it worked. She peeked at me while you were busy with Johnny. What difference does it make? Is he completed with his probation period? I turned away and studied some notes on my desk. She said nothing. I looked back at her and raised my brow. I will take care of it. Good. It's more tidy. If he is in the correct chain of command, people will not question why he is unique. She stared at me. Including you? Yeah, John. Are you serious? He's a huge, attractive stud like the guy you were so taken with in the Caymans. She stared at me. I grinned and winked at her. She smiled and flipped me a finger. Several months later, we held our annual early summer business beach party. I owned many acres of oceanfront property around 12 miles north of Daytona Beach. It was enclosed and gated with a lime rock and parking lot. We had numerous canopies erected up as shade. We had a gasoline-powered generator that kept the refrigerator chilly while also providing lighting and music later. The generator was a good distance distant, connected to the canopies via a buried wire. Our children were able to stay the night at grandmother's house because this was an adult-only gathering. We had a few individuals wander in from all over the beach. Deb moved around and spent time with different groups to make things easier. All of the food was already cooked and simply needed to be warmed up slightly. I had rented 2 portable toilets. Toward the evening, I realized that Jamal was always with Deb, close by. They were seldom alone together. She appeared to be avoiding me. I was getting increasingly agitated. Betty Johnson helped me a lot with the cooking. Her partner was out of town, and she had not wanted to come. But the individuals in her department persuaded her to do it. Betty was aware that I was getting upset. I informed Betty that I planned to walk up the beach. By that point, the audience had thinned. I needed to think of Debbie. She appeared obsessed with Jamal. I knew I wouldn't have a life worth living if she abandoned me. Will she bring the kids with her? Should I simply leave and let her move him in? I couldn't do it. What would happen to Dolly? What exactly was wrong with me that I would be unable to maintain a marriage? I came across a driftwood lock. I sat in the sand, leaning against it. I looked at the small wave that was creeping up onto the sand. They moved relentlessly towards my feet. Finally, I noticed my feet were getting wet. I'd been thinking and sobbing. I heard somebody arriving and noticed two people scanning the beach with flashlights. The light struck me. They approached me and put a light in my face. I couldn't see who it was, but I recognized the voice that spoke. "Will you just wait there till the water covers you?" It was Debbie. I did not glance at her. That would appear to be one. That's not acceptable. I will not let that happen. I need my hubby. We need to talk. Come back with me and we'll finish things up and head home. Betty Jamal will aid us. I looked around and noticed Betty standing about 20 feet away, watching us. Debbie stated, "Betty informed me she saw you coming up this way, and you were unhappy about Jamal and me. I assumed you knew me better than that. I just adore you, my beautiful hubby. I really apologize if you believed there was something between Jamal and me. That cannot happen. You were inextricably linked to me. I've been trying to help him through a difficult period. He is in love, and his heart is broken because of it. Loves someone else. Jamal and I are great friends. There's nothing more. There is no sexual attraction between us." I looked at her and told her I would never believe him if he was not straight. "How did you figure that out?" "Because every male is sexually attracted to you. Unless he's not straight. Who is he in love with? You? Me? I have never given a sign. I am not at all attracted to him. I believe he was aware that you always kept an eye on him. I know he misunderstood his interest. You assumed he was interested in me and attempted to scare him away from me. Heck, girl, you spend every moment you can with him. What are you expecting me to think? I'm still not convinced. You don't even lust after him. Ask Betty what everyone else thinks." Betty is John, correct? I've pondered, and I've heard a lot of discussion about it. The girls are all concerned about what it would mean for John if it were true, especially given what he went through with Sally. Debbie's hands rose to her face. She sobbed. No, what did I do to my poor husband? I assumed he was just taunting me. I did not know. He genuinely thought I cared about Jamal. I just wanted to make Jamal feel better about John. I understand how he feels because I adore John with all of my heart and soul. He came into my office every morning to visit John. He was constantly close to me because that is where John is. John is the most attractive man he has ever seen. I agree. I looked at Betty and Debbie. "Well, he's kind of cute." They exchanged glances and giggled. Betty laughed and said she'd set me up with him. Debbie said, "No way. John only gets fixed up with me. Besides, I know Jamal spotted John when he was playing with me at the last pool party, which made my husband a little excited. Jamal was quite impressed." I stared at the two laughing girls. "Ladies, I don't care whether Mr. is repressed, impressed, or depressed. I am in no way or form available. I happen to be one of the most attractive women alive. When we married, I made some vows and commitments to her in front of God. To the best of my knowledge, those pledges remain in effect, and I will never breach them." Debbie looked at me for a second and remarked, "Betty, isn't that the sweetest thing you've ever heard?" The best part is that he's the world's worst liar. When we go shopping together, I always try on an outfit that I know looks terrible on me. I often ask him if everything looks nice. He will stall and avoid offering a response. If I press him, he'll claim that the hue does me justice or whatever. If I say I like it, he'll eventually say no. I do not like how it looks on you. John cannot look me in the eyes and tell me even a small white lie. I can't even think about lying to him. I can tease him without actually lying to him. I looked at Debbie. "Honey, do you view Jamal as a problem at all?" "No, not really. He may irritate you little, but he is not a problem in the grand scheme of things. I'll have him acquire his knowledge from Marty or Betty, which should work great. His work is great in every way. His reports are complete and delivered on schedule. There has been nothing about him, and he solves difficulties swiftly. Do I need to keep an eye on both of you? Not at all." She grinned. "Please keep an eye on me. I adore that." "Okay, tell him why we're placing him back in the chain of command and how it'll benefit him. Simply tell him that he has finished his probation and that he requires no additional guidance from you to accomplish his job successfully. As a result, he will be included into the team of examining engineers and will be compensated appropriately." Debbie smiled softly. "It's no surprise that I adore you so much. That's a simple but sensible approach that makes everyone happy." I laughed. "If you're feeling wonderful, will you make me feel good when we put our children to bed tonight? That is something you can bank on, honey. It'll be my joy. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, write a comment below with your thoughts on what transpired. Take care.